Presentation, introduction of themselves, and the services that they'll be providing. As you know, later in the month, we're having a special meeting with our lobbyists to begin developing some goals for federal funding. So today's just an introduction.
Thank you. Welcome, everyone.
Thank you. Well, good afternoon, Chairman Evans and board members. We appreciate the opportunity to talk with you today, and most of all, to serve as your federal legislative consultant in Washington, D.C. I'm so excited to, of course, present myself and the team, and I'll tell you that we've been a team for a long time. We work together, I think, collectively for close to probably 30 years if you add it together. I know Leslie and myself have been over 20, and Debbie probably 15. So we are well versed amongst ourselves, and of course we all have done extensive work in the state of North Carolina. So I welcome that, especially as a North Carolinian myself. Also, just to briefly introduce myself again, Ron Ham, President of the Ham Consulting Group. I served as an aide in city and county government in San Diego, California, which then led me to become a federal lobbyist advocating for local governments and higher education institutions in Washington, D.C. So I've done that for over the last 26 years, and it's always a joy to be able to help people that are truly on the ground making a difference in other people's lives. So why were we hired? We were specifically hired to work with you first and your congressional delegation, the administration here in Washington, to advance your federal agenda and action plan, which we'll be working to develop with your staff. We'll be there in person on March 25th for meetings with the department heads and a meeting with you as well to talk through some of the things that would compose that federal plan. The other thing too, so many times people are interested in all the resources coming out of Washington, which of course you're talking about trillions of dollars now. Congratulations on the latest funding that you received. But the other thing in terms of identifying funding, where those resources are, how can we strategically position you to make sure that we're in the appropriate accounts and that your projects sort of meet the muster here in Washington. So we do all those things. We also look at how we protect you against whether it's federal regulations or the loss of programmatic funding that could affect your ability to serve the citizens of Cumberland County. And then also, are there innovative ways that we can look at doing things that perhaps there may not present an avenue may not be presented, but maybe we create one. So those are the kinds of things that we do. And I will tell you, again, with trillions of dollars available at the federal level and possibly more to come through the infrastructure bills, this is something that we will be working continuously on. We don't have all the answers on all that today, and I do know we will be talking again in detail on the American Rescue Plan when we arrive in Cumberland County for the meetings on May 25th. The other thing I'll say too is that doing business with the federal government takes time, it takes patience, and it takes tenacity. We're experienced with all of those things, but I would say too that we know you're busy managing the affairs of the county, on the ground, and so we will take up some of that slack on the federal level, in terms of being in constant contact with the congressional delegation, with the administration, and also I'll point out being in constant contact with your staff. We've already set up pre-scheduled meetings. We meet bi-weekly, but in addition, we're always available for email communication and phone communication on an as-needed basis. So I think that creates great accountability on both ends. I'll say the other thing too is that we can't do our job effectively without a true partnership. So we felt like we've had that thus far. We look forward to working more closely with you, learning about the priorities from the board and how we can advance those issues. And at this time, I would like to introduce my colleague, Leslie Mazingo. She'll briefly discuss the federal agenda process, sort of the meat of all this, and also our work on federal grants. So Leslie, I'll turn it over to you.
Thanks, Ron. Well, again, good afternoon to Mr. Chairman, County Commissioners, and management staff. I can't tell you personally how thrilled I am to be working for Cumberland County. Again, actually, I worked for Cumberland a number of years ago, so coming full circle and working now on Ron's team. Again, my name is Leslie Mazingo, and I have been in business for about 30 years. I currently also am the federal consultant to the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners, and I also work for the North Carolina Association of Regional Councils of Government. So those are two of the larger groups that you will have a connection with as well that I work for, and will always be looking for opportunities for partnerships for that. As Ron mentioned, we'll be working on the, and I forgot to mention, I'm sorry, I'm also the local office. So while Ron and I have an office in D.C. on Capitol Hill, across from the Senate office buildings, I also have an office in North Carolina full-time, so always available to meet in person whenever needed. Ron mentioned the federal action plan or federal agenda. We will be working on that, as we mentioned, May 25th, meeting with department leaders, putting together all of the things that become priorities, and then in coordination with all of you to make sure that we're meeting the priorities of the elected board. That will be put into a format that works with the timing of the federal government, so that you're not asking for things that maybe are a year or 2 year off, but instead you're focused on the priorities that are also the focus of the current administration and the current 117th Congress. And then we'll work up the strategies, talking points, briefing sheets, all of the things necessary to implement that federal action plan. So you will have an opportunity to review that, to provide feedback, but then as Ron said, we also need your engagement. We will be there to provide talking points and anything else that you need at those times, and also advice in terms of when to make that phone call, so that the timing is right, you have the best impact. So all of that is forthcoming. You'll be hearing more about that as we move into it. The other thing that we handle for you is pursuing federal grants. So one of the things that you may be aware of is that in the American Rescue Plan, not only do you have your direct allocation, but there are literally hundreds of billions of dollars going to federal competitive grants. And so in addition to that, there are also ongoing FY21 appropriations grants that we're currently in, and there will be FY22 grants starting as early as October 1. So what we do on your behalf is we proactively go through all of the Federal Register notices, weed out the things that don't have any relevance to you, and then put the things that do have relevance to the county into an alert that is sent proactively to your department, asking them to look through them and find ways to help match your project up to existing grants. And then we work through the grants process with you, including but not limited to congressional support for those grants. So that's a very brief overview. I know you've got a very full agenda today. We look forward to discussing more of these services and the ways that we can be most helpful to the county with you going forward. But for now, I'll turn it over to Debbie Bryant.
Thanks, Leslie. Mr. Chairman, good to be with you. I also worked for the city and the county and the chamber some years ago, and I've been in Washington almost 40 years with almost 10 years in state government working for Governor Jim Hunt. So I learned appropriations the hard way, and that was through hurricane recovery and Hurricanes Fran and Floyd. I think coming from a governor's office, I have more of a statewide regional perspective. In looking, I will focus on the economic development goals of the county's agenda and ways to leverage Fort Bragg and the Veterans Administration and some of the national goals that are very relevant in the area. I worked in the past. We worked on the Defense and Security Technology Accelerator that was located on Ramsey Street, the south of the Military Business Park, and we secured $8.6 million for DISTA and then another $1.3 for the Military Business Park. So coming back around, working with, I'll be working with Robert Van Goynes on some things that he's thinking about out there in terms of the HR talent portal. When we worked with DISTA, we secured defense dollars for that. We also really collaborated with the North Carolina Technology Association. I think that's another set of resources that I bring to the team, having had experience representing several of the statewide organizations out of Raleigh. I worked for Methodist University and focused on forensic and cybersecurity years ago, so that's certainly relevant today, and really leveraged some Veterans Affairs issues to get them money for their PA program, expand their PA program in their Environmental Simulation Center. So I'm focused on North Carolina Military Affairs Commission, again, developing the HR talent portal for your transitioning military and current military spouses and current veterans to provide jobs there. The recovery plan has some funds for state small business credit initiative. I worked for the Rural Center years ago. I have already introduced NC Seed and Susie Rabowski to them, and I'm hoping that will be a collaborative that will work. And then, of course, watching the North Carolina Recovery Office, because I think the state funds are going to be excellent matching monies for the kinds of things you want to do, and will help, in fact, better leverage both the city and the county funding that you will receive. Why don't we make sure we get as much of the state money to match those dollars? So again, I bring sort of the economic development focus to that, and we'll be working on those issues. And it's great to be working for Cumberland County again, and we look forward to being with you. Ron?
Thank you, Debbie. Appreciate that. And we're happy to take any questions that you may have. I know you have a tight agenda, so we'll make sure we answer them as
Very much. Are there any questions from the board? Yes.
Is this as exciting as it sounds?
Oh,
It is fun.
That's what I wanted to hear. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Keith.
Thank you again, and I appreciate the information that you gave the American Recovery, our group earlier on. It was a pleasure to meet you guys. And I know how hard you're working up there, and you feel like you're juggling balls and they keep throwing them at you. But what's going to be the focus for Cumberland County? Should we be focusing on our relationship with the military also at some point? And what can we do to set us apart from all the other counties and governments in the state of North Carolina and in the federal government to, be able to shine a little bit brighter?
Yeah, I'll start. I think I'll have Debbie come into this. I think one of the things, when you look up here, like you said, everyone is competing for all of these different dollars, but I think you have an asset, and we try to look at linking assets. I think Debbie hit it on the head. What can we do from a regional perspective? You have a jewel there that many other communities don't have with the military base, and I think there are opportunities, unique opportunities around that to say, hey, this infrastructure, we have one of the largest bases in the world there. So, there is infrastructure that is needed to support the base and the community around the base. So whether that's water and sewer, transportation. So it goes beyond, I think the military can be leveraged to actually improve the entire community. So that's one differentiator that I would say that is a very strong differentiator. And I think too, what we do, when you look at the different proposals for projects, one of the things we do talk to the agencies quite a bit. So we want to get an understanding of what they're asking for. I can just give you an example. Yesterday I met with the Intergovernmental Deputy Assistant Secretary of Intergovernmental Affairs at USDOT, and we talked about the build grant, or what they call the RAISE grant. So we were able to get some inside information, although it's on the street, gave us some really good things that we need to concentrate on in that next grant proposal. So those are the kinds of things that I think that can make you more competitive. What are some of the inside things that you can learn, and maybe they give them to other people, but better than that, how can you take those, expound on them to sort of make your project speak exactly to the goals and objectives of the agency? So those are kind of the things I think that we'll concentrate on. I'll go back to Debbie now because she may have much more to say on the military side of it. Debbie?
When I first started out, I went to Meredith, and I grew up near northwest of Winston-Salem and went to Meredith, and then got my master's at State, and then went to work in state government in Raleigh. Fayetteville was and Cumberland County were very different places then than they are now. And there really was a us and them relationship with Fort Bragg. And now, I think anytime that you've got an opportunity to meet the new commanders, as they come in and educate the civilian force there about the needs and wants of Cumberland County, you've got to use that opportunity, and you've got to build those relations. You are the experts. They're coming into your community, so you know what you've got and you know what you need. And I think in every place, if we're going to talk about when they started closing Bragg Boulevard, and we got North Carolina DOT to step up and help fund some road improvements around Murchison Road. When they talk about the needs for their Fort Bragg high school students coming into E. Smith or wherever they're going to go, are they going to go to private school somewhere else, or are they going to go to E. Smith? And how do we make E. Smith, better and more responsive to those kids from Fort Bragg? Because quite frankly, I think you want those soldiers to stay in Cumberland County and be a part of your economy and be the workers for the technology companies that are coming in and for the defense-related industries that are being developed in the area. If we want them to stay, then we need them to have a positive experience there. So we're always, there are very few accounts that will, federal money, they don't build schools with federal money, but there are some accounts where they will support community infrastructure. And we're looking for projects that will, tap into those monies. It's only the second or third year that those monies have been available. But anything that we can leverage, y'all do a great job working for the veterans. You put your own money into serving the veterans. So let's figure out, how best to make sure that every pot of money within the Veterans Affairs Administration has that we are able to maximize and leverage those dollars. We were able to get money from Methodist University because they had some partnerships with the VA, and we could certainly take that same approach and making sure we understand, and that's why we're coming to understand everything from your water and sewer needs to your performing arts center to your economic development agenda to other concerns that you've got, because you really want a positive, you want to be able to serve those veterans, serve those transitioning soldiers, keep those people there. They're going to be good taxpayers, and all these companies that are coming in, they're going to need people. And we've always been able to make the argument that your citizens are more likely to be able to pass the security checks and the background checks than, those from other areas. That is a benefit, that is a resource. Companies know that you've got good folks, and let's keep them in Cumberland County and keep them as Cumberland County taxpayers.
Are there any more questions or comments? Well, I would like to say we welcome you. We know that we expect great things from you, and I know that you will deliver. And Leslie, it's good to work with you again. It's good to see you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Madam Manager.
Yes, sir. Our second presentation is on the Cumberland Hope Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan. Gene Booth, our Emergency Services Director, I'm going to ask him to come forward. This is being accomplished through a statewide grant, and the state actually employed the assistance of a consultant, AECOM. And so, Mr. Booth, will you come forward and please present introduce the consultants, please.
Welcome, sir.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. It's my pleasure to be able to introduce to you today the update to the Cumberland Hope Hazard Mitigation Plan. So we know many disasters are predictable, and much of the damage caused by these events can be reduced or eliminated. We've learned that over, especially here lately or recently with Matthew and Florence. In an effort to reduce the amount of disaster loss, U.S. Congress passed the Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000. This act emphasized the need for state and local government to closely coordinate on mitigation planning activities and make development of a hazard mitigation plan specific to for eligibility requirements for any local government applying for federal mitigation funding. These funds include the Hazard Mitigation Grant Program, the Pre-Disaster Mitigation Grant Program, and Flood Mitigation Assistance Program, all of which are administered by FEMA. This hazard mitigation plan must be updated every 5 years. And in many cases, these plans are done on a regional basis to save money, and hence we have our Cumberland Hazard Mitigation Plan. North Carolina Emergency Management contracted with AECOM to provide these counties consulting services to update their plans that are currently due. Cumberland Hope County, in conjunction with AECOM, Region 4 North Carolina Emergency Management, and community representatives work together to update the existing plan. This process was inclusive of a hazard mitigation committee that included all the jurisdictions of both Cumberland and Hope, private businesses, volunteer organizations, and a public meeting was held on February 27th, 2020 to get input from the public. This plan, our updated plan, has been reviewed by the state and is currently waiting FEMA review. I want to introduce to you representatives from both North Carolina Emergency Management, Mr. John Mello, Chris Krug, and representatives from AECOM, Kelly Keefe. And then we'll ask for any comments and feedback and questions from the board. So I'll start with Mr. John Mello or Chris Krug. Are you able to jump in here now?
Hello, Chris Krug here. I'm the Mitigation Plans Manager for North Carolina Emergency Management. We've had a long history working with Gene in the county, and we appreciate his effort on helping shepherd this update through the process. Just to remind you of the importance of this, adopting this approved plan is a requirement for being eligible for both federal and certain state disaster relief and mitigation funds. So we look forward to your adoption of the plan, and if you have any questions regarding the plan or mitigation activities in general, please feel free to let us know. Thank you.
I believe Ms. Keefe or John Mello had a presentation. Do you need some assistance, Kelly, getting that up on the board? John?
Yes, I'm here. I'm prepared to do the presentation if slides available there for them to see.
They were in their agenda packet, I believe, and you made a presenter to show.
Okay. Share. Are you seeing full screen there?
Yes, sir.
Should be?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
John Mello. I work with Chris Crew, hazard mitigation planner for the state with North Carolina Emergency Management. Been a full-time mitigation planner for about 11 years and been working in the emergency management field for about 35 now. So, seen many things, done many things. As Gene and Chris were saying, mitigation plan is a requirement for all communities to receive recovery funds. But let me just start with what a mitigation plan is. What is mitigation? Obviously, it's a word you can look up in the dictionary. As it applies to natural disasters, it's any sustained action that the community can take to reduce or eliminate the long-term risk that obviously your citizens have to the built environment and to their property. It's obviously a continuous, ongoing process. The plan itself is a living plan, so even though we do a risk assessment every 5 years and update the plan every 5 years, there's activity that oftentimes takes place within that 5-year period. Usually mitigation projects might be elevating homes, might be acquisition of homes. I'll get to that a little bit more in a minute. Mitigation can take place pre-disaster. That's really what it's designed for. But it also takes place post-disaster. As you know, you've been impacted by several significant events here in the last just few years. And so mitigation then kicks in post-disaster, where we try to look at what has been damaged and now how do we mitigate ourselves out of it. A few examples, as I mentioned: elevation of homes above the base flood elevation, levees, flood walls, enforcing stronger building codes. Cumberland County uses the International Building Code Standard, which is the best. Land use planning and other types of planning. It might be stormwater planning. It might be development planning. It might be your long-term strategic plan, where you build mitigation measures into your long-term planning efforts. Safe rooms from high wind and hurricanes. So again, why are we doing this? Reduce losses in your community, reduce loss of life, damage to property, reduce economic impacts, and reduce the social impacts, which, as you know and you've seen, again, just in the last few years, the social impacts of disaster are really devastating for a community, and it takes a long time to come back from. All right, mitigation saves money. On a national level, for the most part, every dollar that's invested in mitigation, we save $6 overall. And that's based on the fact that, a simple example, if you elevate a home above the base flood elevation, and then you have several more floods, the home doesn't flood, and we save money. We save money by no damage to the structure and utilities. We don't have to rescue those people. We don't have to put those people in hotels. It goes on from there. It also creates a more resilient community in terms of coming back from the disaster. You can come back from the disaster quicker. Businesses open quicker, schools open quicker, if proper mitigation is built into new and existing construction. Biggest thing, we break the cycle of repetitive damage from disasters. As you know, if a citizen is flooded, and then they're flooded a second, third, and fourth time, it's devastating for that person or that family. Okay. As Chris Crew mentioned, the mitigation plan is a requirement in North Carolina to get federal grant money after a disaster. The pre-disaster mitigation is an annual competitive grant. Flood mitigation assistance is specifically for citizens who have been repetitively flooded, and so it's a more specific grant. It's a little bit easier sometimes to get money for those folks because it's not as competitive as the pre-disaster mitigation grant. The Hazard Mitigation Grant Program is a program that kicks in post-disaster, and that's usually where you see the big dollars come in. But when the state receives public assistance and individual assistance money, the state also receives an additional, in this case, 20% from the federal government to do mitigation projects. So that's a lot of money. It's a lot of money that your community can tap into post-disaster, and you have on several occasions. Bridge is a new program, building resistant infrastructure. It's going to replace the pre-disaster mitigation program. What we're really looking at with Bridge is making the community more resilient. Stormwater projects, again, building codes. How do we look at the community as a whole and make the community safe? In some cases, how do we look at the region? Again, this is a regional plan, Cumberland and Hope. We know that you have forthright in the area, which is a federal institution. So how do we look at integrating mitigation to make the whole community more resilient? Water doesn't stop at the edge of the map, right? If it's the edge of the map at Hope County, the water is going to continue to flow in Cumberland, and vice versa. The Disaster Mitigation Act of 2000 is what requires all communities to have a local mitigation plan. In North Carolina, it's started with Chapter 166A, and I'll get to that more in a minute. The plan itself emphasizes a proactive approach to emergency management. Okay? The goal here, again, is to prevent disaster, not respond to disaster. Hopefully, if we can mitigate a community properly, then that reduces the burden on your response community and your recovery community. Okay, North Carolina Senate Bill 300 was passed to require local mitigation plans in North Carolina. There's other parts of this bill that apply to the emergency management program overall. But what we're talking about here specifically is just a requirement for every community in North Carolina to have a mitigation plan. By doing that, it makes you eligible for public assistance after a state-declared disaster. What we've done in North Carolina is we've come up with a system so that these plans are completely funded at the federal and state level, and the county and the towns no longer have to kick in any type of cost share. The federal government pays 75% of it, and the state of North Carolina pays the 25% cost share. We've also taken the burden off of the county to manage another grant. As you know, there's federal grants for everything, and so we try to look at the approach that the more we could take off the table for the communities, the more we ease the burden on them. So we manage the grant, we do the reporting to FEMA on all of the monthly activities, we pay the cost reports, and it just takes the burden, as Gene knows, of doing all that reporting. These are the jurisdictions that are participating. In simple terms, it's every jurisdiction in Cumberland and Hope County, every incorporated jurisdiction. There is a mitigation planning cycle. It starts with the green dot at the top right. You'll see public outreach. AECOM, our contract, developed a survey in cooperation with the mitigation planning team to put out some questions out there to your community. And that's posted on the community websites, and then it's also posted on social media. And they've had great success with social media, especially, I think, people sitting at home during COVID. They've had really good input to that survey. And it asks questions to get a feel for what does the community know about disasters? What do they know about the risk to their communities? From there, a full risk assessment is done. That's the orange dot there. And that just updates the risk assessment to make sure that we know what the hazards were 5 years ago. Has anything significantly changed? Have we had any state or federal declarations? Does local emergency management or planning, can they tell us if there's been significant flooding, let's say, in isolated pockets in the last 5 years? So the risk assessment gets updated, capability assessment is done. That just looks at what capabilities have been added during the last 5 years. How robust is your ability to respond and recover from a disaster? Then the blue dot, bottom left, mitigation strategy, that's where we look at developing a plan to address the risk.
Thank you, John, I appreciate
and so
you,
there's actually-
jumping in, Mr. Mello. I hate to interrupt you,
What's that?
I'm sorry, I had to interrupt
That's
you
okay.
for a minute. We have a rather robust agenda today, and I want to be able to give our commissioners opportunity to ask any questions on this. So,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I appreciate the information you provided thus far.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the board?
That's a question.
Commissioner King.
Thank you. Gene, who should I be addressing to? You, or should I be addressing?
If we could get Ms. Keefe to speak up, she was the AECOM representative that was at every meeting that has done the bulk of the work with addressing and gathering the data from all jurisdictions.
Okay. Just for clarification, there is no relationship.
Right.
Okay?
No.
Right.
I don't know Kelly doesn't know me.
Right, Cousin Cal.
So I'm a little taken back by this because I'm not sure if this is, you haven't said anything specifically about Cumberland County. There's an 800-page report here that we're supposed to be looking through on what is specific to Cumberland County. What I'd like to have known is what kind of lessons learned that we had, because we've had some pretty bad some hurricanes in the last 5 years since the other one was done. So, I mean, nothing like that was even spoken about. What were the lessons learned from what happened in Hurricane Matthew? What happened? Why weren't we prepared? What could we have done better? And I don't know if it's reasonable for Gene and your staff at Emergency Services to have an 800-page document that everybody's trained to know how to do it. It sounds to me like we're doing this because we have to do it, because so we can qualify for grants, or we have to do this or that. But how much is it really implemented? Because, I mean, we did some things really well in these disasters, but we also know that we failed on some things. And how were they specifically addressed in this program? So, Kelly, I don't know if that's going to you, but I am at it that there is one thing that you mentioned, that only the incorporated areas were spoken to on this. But a lot of our problems came in the unincorporated areas that aren't truly townships. Vander and Wade and places that don't have a tether to a municipality or a town, except just for Cumberland County. So I'm a little concerned about that, because, I mean, what was presented to us could be presented to any county in the state. So, I mean, can we get some specifics? Sorry, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Mayor. Sorry. Maybe something's coming up. Mr. Chairman, I know there's a lot of questions, and it's very global, and I don't expect specifics, Gene, but, I mean, we got an 800-page document with no specifics. Maybe they're in the document, but I didn't read it. All 800 pages.
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll speak on that. So with that plan process, we reviewed the existing regional hazard mitigation plan, and we took those action items from each jurisdiction. Each of those municipalities, as well as our county departments, such as planning and engineering, were involved in this process, and our flood management team, to look at those previous action plans. What had been addressed and what lessons learned we had from both Matthew and Florence were considered, and what new mitigation actions we needed to implement and add into this plan, so that we can move forward in the next 5 years and have a focus on additional actions.
That's what I want to know, Gene. What were those plans? What were those lessons learned? What was that after-action report? What can we do better? We had some problems in shelters. We had problems in, obviously, flooding. You know, what were those lessons learned that we can grasp onto?
So, you know, the Cumberland Hope Hazard Mitigation Plan focus on those mitigation items that are associated with flooding, high wind, tornadoes, those natural disasters, and not so much sheltering and resource placement. So we focused more and added into this plan opportunity for elevation, reconstruction, and acquisition of homes that are in the floodplain, and reassessment of our floodplain, where we had many homes that were affected outside of the one. Those off the top of my head were a couple of those actions that were looked at, as well as increasing resources with infrastructure. Kelly may be able to speak on some more additional specifics that I don't have right here in front of me. Kelly?
Yeah, and I think that might be where, make sure I'm unmuted. Yes, confusion lies is this is not a response plan. This is not a preparedness plan. This is a natural hazard mitigation plan. So these are going to be long-term things. So if there was a problem with, like, if it was an evacuations or sheltering, that should be handled in a different plan. This will be long-term mitigation efforts regarding, you know, keeping properties out of the floodplain, whether through acquisition or elevation, so you don't have to respond or shelter people. That's where the mitigation savings comes into place. This is prescriptive from the federal government through the CFR, so we do follow those regulations as to how we put together the plan, and unfortunately that does affect the length of the plan. We cannot insert all those federal requirements without those pages. But yes, at the mitigation action section, it is section 9 of the plan. That will probably be what I call the most robust section if you are looking for actions as like a benchmark. This is what we say we're going to do to mitigate hazards impact in our community, and these are the resources that we need. So you can start to look at some funding numbers to be like, hey, we want to look at some generators for critical facilities. Where can we expand upon that as a community? And that can be at the county level and at the jurisdictional level. And that's usually where you can start to weed out those folks who have to defer their aid of efforts to the county.
Are there any more comments or questions? Mr. Wilson.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Keefe, you and Jimmy can handle this out at family reunion around, but you hit the nail right on the head on when we were out touring. I can't even remember, we've had so many fun little trips here. We as a county didn't provide our emergency crowd with adequate facilities to get in touch with everybody, and we're supposedly doing that now. So if the good Lord will give us, I think, one damage-free hurricane season, we should have everybody up and running by next year. But you mentioned one that just reminded me. We went out to a rescue site or a shelter, and it was structurally sound. There was a problem of hierarchy because we had regular volunteers, church volunteers, the Red Cross, parents that came in with their kids to a local high school. There's plenty of room to mingle, get people walking around if they're getting fidgety. You have adequate water, showers, cooking areas. But we found out that there was no generator there, and it was kind of like sending people, if they might have to go back to their house to get electricity. So I agree with you that some of this stuff comes up and bites you, but that we shouldn't have shelters without generators and a capacity number of like a certain church. It doesn't. Most churches have some sort of little kitchen or something area, but I was worried that we were sending people to shelters that power might go off, but they might have been better off at their house. So I appreciate you mentioning that.
And really, I mean, one of the fundamental things with this plan plan in particular is it is a living, breathing document. And to you all as community members who participate in this planning process, it's good news and bad news. It never ends. So that's a double-edged sword. You can't really ever put it on the shelf and say, clap yourself on the back and be like, I'm done with that. It's a continually evolving process, but you guys can amend your plan at any point in time and decide, like, we would like these additional mitigation actions. We would like to rework some of these mitigation actions. We want to include different partners and stakeholders that we didn't include before, because we have meetings like this where we talk about integrating things into our comprehensive plans, into our emergency operations plans, and we start getting people that know of other things, and it's pulling that thread on the sweater of coming to what is that issue here, and start to be very specific with their mitigation actions. A lot of times they evolve from these very vague actions, like we want to prevent theft, prevent property loss. And now we can start to really fine tune that with the more we kind of market this plan out there as to, we specifically want these 6 critical facilities to have backup power. And that becomes very specific, and when your goals are very specific, they're much more attainable.
Okay,
And state like it when it's specific, because it's probably the easiest platform to get a mitigation grant.
yeah, if you send in a bill for 6 Generacs, it's easier than just saying we'd like some, or we need some help with electricity. How do we get into the long-term planning of being like another San Antonio, where you just absolutely control all your water, and it becomes your thriving market area?
I don't know, that might be more of a state question on how they might want to, like, feel wrangle that kind of planning mechanism.
Have you ever
I don't
seen
know.
it?
I think Chris or Don want to jump in on that.
No, have you ever seen San Antonio? Their water area?
Oh, yes.
Okay, yeah, that, I was asking some of the merchants and the elected officials down there, and they said that it was a federal response to their constant flooding, and now they don't have any, and it's where everything in the center of the town, there's entertainment, food, transportation, everybody uses the waterways because they control them by locks to exactly how high they want them to be. Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Chair.
Are there any more questions or comments from the board? If not, thank you for your presentation, sir.
Yes, sir, I had one more thing, I guess. Emergency recommended move this adoption of resolution supporting the changes, updates reflected to the Cumberland Hope Hazard Mitigation Plan as the item of business for the 17th regular meeting.
Okay, is there a motion? Is there a motion?
Last 2 pages at the end of the presentation.
That's 2 pages of the what, sir?
The video presentation was just done. If you go to the very end of that in your agenda package, it's the very last 2 pages. It says resolution about the Cumberland County Regional Hazard. Mr. Booth said to move that to the item of business. There's really
request it as an item of business, because that's the way it's been handled by the board of finance.
Can it be a consent item?
Yeah, be fine with me. That's, I saw this presentation. I don't see it double stacked as an item of it. I was going to move it up and do something with it, but that's why I said I don't see it.
I mean, that was just the precedent in the past. If the board wants to do it differently, that's the attorney says you want to do it.
No, I'd like to move that we get a copy of this sent to us to be considered on the consent agenda at our next meeting.
Is there a second?
A copy of the presentation? Or
No, a copy of the resolution. It's in the packet, but it's part of the presentation for business, not
I just didn't want the 800-page document.
Second.
All in favor?
Mr. Chairman, our third presentation it's actually coming to us as a request by the City County Liaison Committee meeting that occurred on Friday, April 16th. At that meeting, there was significant discussion about the Homeless Day Center that the City of Fayetteville is developing, and so they thought it would be best if the commissioners received the same presentation that had been presented to the City Council. So today we have with us Chris Colley. He's the Interim Community Development Director with the City of Fayetteville, and so he's going to give us that presentation today.
Welcome, Mr. Colley.
Thank you, Chairman. How are you all?
Doing well.
I do have a little bit of an error to correct on there. I am no longer the interim. I'm the permanent director.
Congratulations. I'm sorry, Chris, I didn't know that.
It just happened. So.
Okay, congratulations.
Wow, we look really good at night with a drum. I mean, look at that.
Yes, very bright.
I could use that as a backdrop for a picture.
As was said, we've been working on the Day Resource Center project since I got here about 18 months ago, and I know the community's been working on it, had it near and dear for a lot longer than that. Complicated project, lots of federal rules and regulations, and so we did go to City Council and kind of brief them on where the project is right now. We wanted to come and do the same. I have tweaked this a little bit just to remind you all, City Council has been getting fairly regular briefings, just kind of the level setting of where we are right now. So what I want to talk about is what is a Day Resource Center, what's the hope and intent of this project, what's the grant background for, what can it be used for, what's the timeline on the project thus far and to come, and then what's the next steps. So since I'm new here, again, just so you can see it written down, my name is Christopher Colley. Grew up near Fayetteville and Rockingham, went to school at Campbell, went to school at Pembroke, so I've been all around this region most of my life. Happy to be back home. I've been here for about 18 months now. So, all right, so first off, what is a Day Resource Center? So the idea is that it's a multi-purpose facility designed to serve the needs of persons experiencing homelessness. This is not supposed to be an overnight shelter. This is supposed to be a place where folks who are experiencing homelessness can come and get services from providers. Now, who are those providers? Ideally, it's a convergence of service providers who see this as a co-located environment where they can come in. If you want to think about it like the business model of running an airport, you know, you have different vendors to come in and fill out your airport. You don't actually run the Salsarita restaurant. And so that's what we're looking to do. And so I've got a couple pictures here of examples of a child care playroom, maybe a free dental clinic once a month or every couple of weeks. And then you can see there's a little bit of a waiting room here. But what you don't see is large swaths of shelter beds and bunk beds and things like that. Now, we will get to its purpose as an emergency shelter, but day to day, day in and day out, this would be used as a place for people experiencing homelessness to come get assistance and do business, not to sleep.
Does it include meals?
So right now, we're not scoping a full kitchen into it, but we are scoping a warming kitchen. So we will have the ability to serve and provide meals through community partners, but we won't be actually prepping and cooking food on site. So first off, where's the money coming from? So this is a bit of a refresher for everybody. So the core money is coming from the Department of Housing and Urban Development from HUD at the federal level. And then that money has been given down to the Department of Public Safety through a group called NCORE, North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency. Then they have given that money to what they call subrecipients. So they're the recipient and then we're the subrecipients. So that's county governments, municipalities, and nonprofit organizations. And then once we select people to actually build the place, design it, those folks will be contractors, consultants, engineers, all of that stuff. So the money's flowing from federal through a state holdover and then to us, which is a little bit different than most of the HUD money that we get. So the county and the city are both what's called entitlement communities. So normally our HUD money comes straight from the feds to us, and then you all get to decide exactly what to do with it. This has a stop off with the state who tells us what we're allowed to do with the money. So that's created an additional layer. It's also created some pretty great guidance. Yes, sir?
Where is the money right now?
The money right now is in the city of Fayetteville.
So you have received, if I remember right, it was $3 million?
3.99.
$3.99 million on the grant specifically for the day center, and it's in your account.
So it is a reimbursement basis, just like most of these federal grants are. So we have recognized the money. As we spend it, we'll draw it down. So it's not sitting in our bank account, but it is sitting in several levels of treasury at the state and federal level.
Okay, good for you.
So that's our partner. So that's the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency. It's a new office, so before this all happened in 2019, this actually came through the Department of Commerce, and they handled most CDBG and HUD programs. And so when the governor created NCORE, they moved the disaster recovery stuff over to them. Could have seen a global pandemic at that time, but honestly, we're lucky to have this group focused solely on recovery efforts right now, even with some of the challenges that have gone on with the scope and scale of it all. So they didn't come into existence until 2019, and they got identified as the core grantee for Hurricane Matthew and Florence assistance. Ideally, again, that centralized structure for working through pandemic or through disaster recovery, and then they're trying to put processes in place so that they can lead to an efficient service from the state level. Things take time when something's new, so just work with them if you can. So as far as what the grant is for, so the primary use for this grant is a disaster recovery grant. So it is to increase the capacity of emergency shelters in Fayetteville and Cumberland County as a whole. Now, I wasn't here the last time y'all had a hurricane, but I've heard stories. Y'all had folks staying in high school gyms and rec centers that had nowhere to go. You didn't have very much emergency capacity to leave them in while the community began recovery. This will give us that capacity. So when that hurricane hits, this shelter converts to an emergency shelter run in conjunction with the county emergency management that says, here's a resource that we have to put people in to get them out of harm's way. But it's not going to be that 365 days a year, so what are we going to do in the meantime? And that's where the Data Resource Center idea came from. Let's use it for something good during that interim. And it can't be a full-time shelter because then the shelter would be full in a hurricane. So we wanted to do something where we could build resiliency in an at-risk population. So if we can bring folks who are experiencing homelessness in, help them with centralized case management, help them get that Social Security card or birth certificate or whatever it is, stopping them from moving to that next step of getting an apartment or getting on government assistance or getting a job. Maybe they won't need that emergency shelter the next time that hurricane happens. So as far as what the money can be used for, we said it was $3.99 million. We can use it to buy the land, we can design the facility, construct and buy equipment that it's essential to the operation of the facility. So this is a capital grant. So as far as the project timeline, we talked about 2019, NCORE getting created and taken over. In the winter of 2019, right about the time I got here, they executed new agreements, and they executed that agreement with the city of Fayetteville. In March, we selected an architect, a company called IBI. They also designed the Oak City Cares facility in Raleigh, which is another data resource center. Then we engaged a consulting called Fountainworks, and we did several community focus groups. So we did focus groups with service providers, with the general public, with city council. I believe a couple of county commissioners also weighed in on some of that. And then my community services manager, Alex, actually went out and did focus groups and surveys with the homeless population. I can't be prouder of him because I was at the height of the pandemic and he went out there because he cares. So with that information and those community surveys, the architect had information on what needs to go in this. And that's where we kind of fine-tune those ideas of, do we have a commercial kitchen? Do we just have a warning station? Do we need a dentist office? What types of rooms do we need? And so the architect took all of that and their experience from Oak City Cares and laid out a space plan and told us how much space we need to get. And so what size building, what size lot. So right now, in August and September, we talked to council about a bunch of different locations. Some of those locations were discussed previously before I got here as well. We had the architect rank about 13 different locations, and he got it down to 3. We took those 3 to council and said, this is our favorite one. In a closed session, they directed us to move forward with property negotiations. At this point, we have been successful with property negotiations. What we are waiting for right now is to finalize the environmental review in court, because it's their money. They have to do the environment. For D, we do environmental reviews every day. In this case, INCOR has to do it, and so we're on their timeline a little bit. The next step is, once that environmental review is complete, we'll go public with the location, because that is the last step in saying that this is definitely the place that we're buying. The seller's on board. We've negotiated a price. Everybody's ready to go. At that same time, we'll award a full design contract. They'll finish the design of the facility, and then we'll bid out construction. So that's a lot to do just on the capital side. See and figure out what an operating plan looks like. And so that's where we are right now.
Quick question.
Yes, sir.
First of all, comment. Last time that we talked in this room with the mayor and a couple of, I think Doug Hewitt was with us and a couple other individuals, they at that time did not express that they were this far along with this day center. Actually, there was nothing done according to them at that time. Now, you're at the place to where you located a place to build it. And would you mind disclosing that place?
Not quite yet.
I thought I'd try.
Yeah, no, it's, I feel pretty confident about where we are and that we're locked down, but I do owe it to my bosses to say it to them first, so.
Oh, they don't care. Just kidding. Okay, so I'm really stunned. To be honest, I'm really stunned at the fact that you're this far along, and which is a good thing. It really is. I'm done. I'm done. I just don't know. What is it that you would expect from the county if the county were to work with you on this project? You have any idea?
Some of the conversations that we've had is we talked to River Jackson about sending some staff over occasionally, especially when they have surge demand. When they do like the lighting programs and things like that, maybe they'll send 1 or 2 case managers over to work. Those types of partnerships would be critical. Having Dr. Green send a few folks over, those types of support and partnerships are going to be the biggest piece to make it work. I'm not.
But do it.
So, Dee and I, along with our bosses, are going to sharpen our pencils, and we're going to come back to council and to the board and put a number out there. We're not ready for that yet. I don't think that number's gonna be astronomical.
Well, I will say for myself, I'm very pleased at what I'm hearing that the city is doing as far as homelessness is concerned. This is something that's been needed, and I applaud you. Is there any more comments or questions from the board? Commissioner Stewart.
Thank you so much for your presentation, and I too am shocked. However, your presentation meets a lot of my concerns that I have when it comes to homelessness, but I'm interested in if your resource center meets the gaps that we have, that we will hear from our feasibility study. Because it's not a shelter. Do you know how many beds that you will have for emergency services?
That'll come with 30% design, so as soon as we move into awarding a design contract, that's one of the first things that they'll do is, what does the conversion process look like to convert this into an emergency shelter?
Okay. And it sounds like to me that that's the only thing missing is beds on a regular basis for those who are homeless, but everything else sounds good. But I know that that's a gap that we do have, and so we're still not meeting that gap.
Yes, Commissioner Booth.
I agree with Commissioner Stewart on that, but I like yours in that shouldn't be the place. If they're housed somewhere else, then they won't just kind of like wander in and kind of think about getting a tooth extracted or something. I mean, it'll be a resource center they go to, and then strictly just housing and maybe, showers and stuff like that, getting in and out of the elements and everything, be somewhere else. If you make it all right there, your kitchen that you don't think will be a full-time kitchen, the first time someone uses the microwave, you'll need another microwave, you'll need another burner or stuff like that. So I would keep out of the pillows. I don't think it will be a full-time kitchen. The first time someone uses the microwave, you'll need another microwave, you'll need another burner or stuff like that. So I would keep out of the pillows. I don't think it will be a full-time kitchen. The first time someone uses the microwave, you'll need another microwave, you'll need another burner or stuff like that. So I would keep out of the pillows. I don't think it will be a full-time kitchen. The first time someone uses the microwave, you'll need another microwave, you'll need another burner or stuff like that. So I would keep out of the pillows. I don't think it will be a full-time kitchen. The first time someone uses the microwave, you'll need another microwave, you'll need another burner or stuff like that. So
Our final presentation will be through Sally Shutt and Keith Todd. This is our redesigned website. And again, I want to emphasize redesign. It's not a refresh. It's a project that has been done internally as opposed to externally. It's taken a little bit of time with COVID. And I'll ask Sally Shutt to come forward and introduce the item, and then Mr. Todd's going to go through the website. We're looking for your feedback today. It has not been made live, and so we're looking for any comments or suggestions today.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Welcome.
The county's current website design was unveiled in November of 2017, and that marked our transition to a content management software that allows our departments to update and manage their pages. This is the version prior to that. Today, Innovation and Technology Services Director Keith Todd is going to demonstrate the nearly completed redesigned website. What you will see has been done in-house. And we would like to introduce the website team who made it happen. Claudia Sievers is a Public Information Department's Graphic Design Information Specialist. She's responsible for the visual concept. The ITS team that constructed the website within the Sitefinity content management software are Al Flores, the applications manager, Erwin Kelly, and Alec and Desi, the application analyst programmers. Okay, they've been supported by Deputy ITS Director Daniel Reister and of course Mr. Todd. In March 2020, Public Information and ITS staff began the groundwork on the redesign with two main goals. Make it easier to find things and make it easier to use on mobile devices. Later in March 2020, we all know what happened. The pandemic hit and our time and resources were diverted to emergency communications. The website design and concept work resumed in the summer, and then this team started meeting with all of the departments to gather their input on their departmental homepages and their internal content, and then follow-up meetings were held just this April and May to do the final content review. In addition to that, the ITS team met with those departments and trained them in the latest version of Sitefinity. So now the site is ready for your eyes. In addition to gathering your feedback today, we are also seeking the board's consensus on changing the domain name from co.cumberland.nc.us to cumberlandnc.gov. So now Mr. Todd will come and take over.
Good afternoon. It's my privilege to be able to stand before you and present the county website that this team has been working so hard on for the past several months. And it's my privilege to present on their behalf. So they've been working very hard and diligently to really come up with a website to meet the standards that we put forth, as Sally just mentioned. Specifically, we wanted something that was simple, something that was easy to navigate, and had a consistency throughout the web pages. And so the International Journal of Business determined that 90% of information processed is non-textual or verbal, and 8% of visuals are remembered, in contrast to 20% of what someone reads. And so our focus is really to build a website that had a lot of visuals. You can see the history here of a website developed over time. This was several years back. This was 2017. This is today. What we present today. As you can see, the concept of textual, we didn't quite have a grasp on because this is very heavy, a lot of text. As we move forward to today's website, a little bit more graphics, a little bit more visual, but it's simply not easy enough to navigate. Whereas today's, you can see what we have there. So here's the homepage, and as you see the departments as a menu. We have 4 main menu items. Departments, click that and get quick access to all the departments. How do I, if I'm a citizen, how do I do business in Cumberland County? How do I adopt a pet? How do I apply for a job? How do I find my commissioner? How do I report a lost animal? Our business, do business with the county, and bid RFP opportunities, down to even to public notices, click public notices. The businesses portion of it, and also YourGov. YourGov is basically every area, from board commissioners to calendar events to the CCNC-TV page to our transparent data and financial data, and also links and resources that we have available to us. As you can see here on the scrolling window, this is scrolling notifications, something that's apparent, something that's new. File for Friday, the library page, vaccination clinics, calendar events. I clicked on that. So actually, all these are clickable. So now I can click on those, and it'll take me to the calendar events. This is a combined calendar for all county events in one central location. Whereas I continue to have events for calendars for other departments singularly. This is a combined calendar. I can also click on agenda to get a quick view of how those events look in an agenda view as well. And obviously, at any of these locations, I can click on that. If I click, I get more information. I can add it to my calendar by simply clicking the button now to add that event to my personal calendar. Okay. As I move down, one of the things I thought was really important to have is the tiles. The tiles function, it's a simple button, one click button to get to access to commissioners, COVID-19, jobs, GIS, library, and tax. Those were selected for different reasons. Some of these were just heavy hitters. Our tax website was actually one of the most hit sites we had, pages we had, followed by GIS. And from there, if I click on one of these tiles, it takes me straight to the commissioner's page. I get quick access to the commissioner's information. And if I scroll up and I click on Commissioner Evans, I can click on read his bio, get access to that information. And if you notice, I can also contact him from this page, contact him directly via email. I can also contact the clerk to the board as well, and also something new we added is the ability to email all commissioners from one single location, so I can it comes back around. So.
Is that the part that's not hooked up yet?
Not yet. From commissioner's page, obviously this is the main page here. I have access to all the information, still keeping the theme of tiles and cards. Tiles across the top, and the cards at the lower part of that. And so, if I can scroll up to the lower part, same information is there for his contact information. If you go further down to the footer, you'll see that consistently the same throughout the website as well. So I can click, I get feedback on the website, feedback on anything that the county is doing. That's there. Contact us, events calendar I just took you to a moment ago. Other information. But from this page, I'll show you a few things that I thought. And if I want to look up my representative, I can click that button. And one of the things that we really focus on this time is an integration with Esri, our GIS platform. We wanted to put maps as part of everything we could possibly think of. So if I want to find a representative, I can just start typing 117 Dick Street where I'm currently located. If I click that, it's going to show me a map of where I'm located right here. Also, all the information about my representatives in my area, in my district. And it lists the commissioners there as well. And obviously, we can click that and go directly to the commissioner's page as well from there.
The courthouse. Jeanette, did you know this is your district? The courthouse is your district.
Everything important is in my district.
Okay, all right, thank you. I forgot. Thanks for reminding me.
You forgot that?
I forgot. Thanks for reminding me.
I'm sorry.
The lower part of the page, this is the home page again, still we're keeping the theme of tiles, and as I scroll down, I see news, events, things that are happening current, and there's 9 different events there that continue to roll and be updated. So if I go back to the library, for example, I click on the library. One of the things we put that there for is because the library was a recent merger with our technology, so the website now used to be separate. It is now a part of the single website design we put together, which is that's a big feat for the team to be able to do that. So now we have one web page. Let's see, this is the current web page for CC, the library page. You can see it's not the same brand, it looks a little bit different, doesn't have the same flow. And so bringing it into the comment page gives us now the same information but did it in a consistent way, which is one of our things. From there, let's take a look at locations, for example. If I click on locations, you can see we are integrated in with the Esri product. So now if I take this and scroll down, it'll actually change dynamically and let me know where I'm located on the map, but also what branch, information about the branch. And as I continue to scroll, it updates the page to reflect the picture of the website or the library, and also the location of the map. And it dynamically does that as I scroll through all, I think it's 8 branches of the libraries. At any time, I can just scroll out. I can see more locations of where the library is located. I can just simply click on one of those and see that associates it with that library. Pretty cool feature. All right. One One more thing I thought was really nice, and I think, honestly, I think it's one of the things that teams are most proud of, is the resources and research.
I'm giving you the current printed product.
So the library community resources page, previously we're using those cards in front of you for to look up, to have access to resources available to the citizens. Today, that same book is found on the library webpage, so you can get access to that easily. And I can just flip it like a book and I can see this publication is a guide to local resources for anyone in immediate or acute need of basic human services, food, shelter, clothing, medical assistance, whatever it may be, to see where, how to get access to the information. Also, I can also click on these things here as well to the side. So the current process it takes a couple months, I think, to actually develop and put out and publish those. This is now done through a centralized database, and pull this information into the website, making it easy to use and navigate. So also on the same page, it'll be a digital copy now, and I can also click on a map and see it on the map and see where this is located. Now I can click on any of these locations and see where they are located. If I can find clothing, if I can help looking for food, meals, for jobs, I can click on this location to find the information for myself now pretty quickly. And of course, categories, I'll mention that too. If I click on clothing, it gives me all the locations that I can go to and get assistance with clothing and find clothing. I can even start typing here for children. And it's give me locations I can find specifically children clothing within that same page. So pretty impressive. I think it was a good thing for staff. It was a work for them. So just want to make sure I share with that.
Tell you where to donate.
I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I think it does.
If we know the locations, we know where to go.
You know where to put it.
Yeah. Madam President.
Yeah, so, in the description, if they take donations, there are, like an on street, for example, there is a location to donate and a location to give items out. So in the description, it will tell you whether or not that's the location to donate the items or if that's the location to pick up items. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you.
So just real quickly here, a few more things to show you. And so all the pages here, there's several departments. I won't go through all of them, but as you can see, there is consistency how the page looks throughout the pages. Cards and titles are there, and also the partners that they have as well. You see, I mentioned earlier that ESRI, or GIS integrations, one of the things we wanted to ensure was happening for example, if I go to emergency services, this is their page. If I click on fire marshals, I can get quick access to my fire stations, look up what district they're in, and all those, all the information pertaining to that to those as well, based on my physical address. I'm ready. I think there's one more board of elections I'll show you as well. Board of elections here. If I go over to polling sites, it's quick and easy to find. It has access to and locations to all previously identified polling sites. I can click in, type in my address where I'm currently located, and it'll automatically pop up and navigate to that and tell me exactly where my closest polling site is that I can go vote. Gives me directions, not cross street. I have to place someone to do that. The other thing that Sally mentioned earlier, that we want to make sure that, this is the website in general, but one thing we wanted to make sure we encapsulated was the web development, or local web design. And this is what we had before us here. See if I can zoom in a little bit for you. So this is the mobile version of it. We know that our data supports that 57% of the people that access our website, access it through a mobile device. So we want to make sure we have a mobile design, mobile friendly, and if you see, it looks the exact same way, and those play on cars and play on tile really represents itself really well on a mobile platform. If I click on that same thing I clicked earlier, the same information is going to be right there as well. And it really looks pretty good on the page as well. And I'll just give you one more look on this. Maybe let's see. So I can actually modify this to show what it looks like on the iPad as well. Toggle that to and if you had an iPad, obviously you guys have iPads, commissioners too. It represents what it looks like on the iPad. So it looks good on iPad, on any kind of mobile device at all. It looks really well. So I think that was pretty much a high level run through, locking every single thing. Like Sally said, we definitely want to get your feedback. Your feedback's been important this far. We want to continue to have that feedback now. So.
Are there any questions or comments? Commissioner Council.
I think it's fantastic. I don't know how. I have been your customer for 20 years now and have worried because I'm not as savvy as I ought to be. But I tell you, I don't know how, and I know the Board of Commissioners have given you a fit, as well as Sally, about not having this, not having that, not having the other. But I want to pronounce it excellent before anybody else gets a chance. I don't know how you were able to do your regular work and to come up with this. And I would personally like to see it put in the budget some kind of way. Regular staff isn't having to deal with this. Can't we hire it out?
That is an option.
Or I don't know what you would recommend, but I don't think we have enough staff to do this. Don't know how you've been able to accomplish it. It is amazing. Remember, there's only one person that was here whenever commissioners used to get stuff in a manila folder. And if you dropped your manila folder, Lord help you, because all those loose pages fell out on the floor. Not that I'm old or anything, but just from where we have come from with information services has just been a revelation. And you know that I have talked to you for the last 20 years about something or another. But I am proud. And if anybody is not proud of it, I'm going outside and get my hammer and hit them with it. Because it is amazing. It's amazing, girl. Okay? It's amazing. I wish you could see it through my eyeballs. Okay, you have to see it through my eyes. And all of us have been critical. Are you smiling, Jim? Okay, we gotta like it. You better smile.
You follow this.
Are there any more questions for Tommy? Because you have gotten you were the one that conducted the survey, that talked about it, and all that kind of stuff. It looks darn good. I think I've earned the right to say that. You are good. Take a darn bow.
You got your first beta test, right?
Take much general information for this meeting, okay? And I don't like that.
Start the presentation.
But this is worth it. This is worth it, okay? While I'm up, baby girl, you and the baby of the bunch.
Yes, ma'am.
I have to take you back. These guys can take you back, but they can't take you back as far as I can. And believe me when I say it, this is a miracle. Do you remember when we used to get, commissioners used to get, and on top of that, it would be a manila folder
Yes, ma'am, I go back that far.
with the information.
That started well.
And if you
Your church brought you here.
it wasn't me. Okay, I'm gonna give you some more, I'm gonna shut up now. Jimmy told me to hush. So, but I had to get that in. I had to get that in. I'm getting scared. And the chairman said that I had taken up all my time and everybody else's time. He told me that.
No, I didn't say that. Is there any other comments or questions? Commissioner Keith?
Keith, props to your team. I don't know how you follow Commissioner Council's accolades, but I do have a couple of questions that I noticed on the last emails that, you know, for you guys, you're in the middle of it, you're doing it, you understand web design. I think we're a little bit like the public, you know, so we can be good beta testers. A couple things that we had talked about it sometime, and I don't know if it's going to be in or it's a plan to be in. But one, is there an ability to try to schedule an appointment to have an inspection or do any of that stuff? And the possibility of actually having a bit of an e-commerce portion of it to where they could pay not a court tax, but you know, a permit or something like that and schedule a permit.
Yes, sir. That would be a part of our planning Intergo project, which is slowly concluding. We're getting close to a go-live date on that now. Actually, we'll be presenting that to you, I think, very soon.
Will we have a link in with here?
Yes, sir.
Okay, excellent. I know she didn't have a lot of video access to the YouTube. It's probably in there somewhere. Okay. One of the really critical things I put on the previous webpage was their search function was not very good. If you ask for to say a commissioners meeting, it may take you back to 2013 when the word commissioner meeting showed up. And it really didn't do, is there a way to dial that in a little bit so it's more?
Yes, sir. It's much more accurate now than it ever has been. And it's at the very front of the page as well. I failed to mention that when I first showed it, but the search bar is front and center for that reason, because if I search, it automatically suggests things to me to look for, but also I get more current information. Obviously, it's a lot. You want to break that down and be more precise in the search, but yes, I can search that and get information about anything there.
Yeah, it gave you a lot of information that you could ask for a general term and you've got, 3,000 different responses. And the last thing I had was, I like that how you have it responsive to the iPhones and the iPads and all that. I think that's great. And I think that's going to help out the citizens a lot. What is the next step to being able to connect this with an app?
Yes, this was an absolute first step to get there. This web page here was not really ready for that just yet. Now we are. So we can now look towards a web app or a mobile app that can marry up to this web app that we have here.
Yeah, I think that's I think a lot of people communicate with their phones now, and it kind of means you have a ride when you have your app. I appreciate the documentation like this. These have been around for years, but nobody knew how to find them. Nobody knew all the services they had, and now we have them available. And so that's good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any more questions or comments? Yes, Commissioner Booth.
I'm so, there you go.
Any more questions or comments? If not,
I think somebody wants me to show you one more thing.
Okay.
Real quick.
Yeah, on the library page, they're at the bottom, because Al was over there trying to get Keith's attention. There is an Ask Us Live. There's a librarian over at Headquarters Library waiting to answer questions. This is a feature they have currently on their page. And when it's not during business hours, it just says Ask Us. You put in a question there and they'll follow up. But, what do you want to ask? Test, like a test. But it is available on the website there, so you can, if you need homework help, or, geology help or something, live and ask the librarian.
one more thing, before you sit down, if you could show me this. Please show me where Commissioner Lancaster and Commissioner Evans represents. Can you show me that on the website?
Oh, my goodness. Oh, my goodness.
I would just like to see if you could show me.
You're large and in charge.
That's an answer, he said.
And that would be the county of Cumberland, wouldn't it?
Yes.
Thank you so much.
You speak for all.
No, I was just thinking about Commissioner Council saying that everything important is in her district.
And you'll.
I knew what that was. You know
Oh,
what
I do.
that
She said everything is important and more.
I love you too. Yes.
Yes, sir, if we can, we have about 15 minutes before Mr. Moorfield needs to jump on his call. So if we can scroll down and pick up item 4L, the policy prohibiting sales of surplus property to bidders with delinquent property taxes.
Welcome, Attorney Moorfield.
Really, I'm looking at my 10 minutes, but this parking wrap up anything that I don't get to, because I gotta get to all of them. As you may recall, Commissioner Keith brought up a few weeks ago, a concern about surplus property bids being made by people who had delinquent taxes. And the board voted for me to write up something for you to consider. This is in session. What I've written up is if you look at that attachment, the first 5 things in that first 5 other things are the policy that you've already adopted. It's already in place. The 6, 7, 8, 9 are what it would take to restrict or prohibit people who make bids who have delinquent taxes. And it's a little more complicated than you might think, because I know the instance that Mr. Keith was talking about, the bidder in that situation was making a bid on behalf of his limited liability company. He didn't have any delinquent taxes. His limited liability company did. So he's made 2 more bids now just in his name. He doesn't have any delinquent taxes. So I'm just telling you that, there's, it's not necessarily a cure-all about anything. One thing, y'all have probably noticed for the last couple of months, 3 or 4 months, yes, we seem to have had a number of increase in the number of bids that get presented for consideration. And that's true. Just today, there are 62 parcels on the surplus property list. That's the least number that it's been since I've been here. And I broke this down to make it apparent about the reason for the other portion of your bidding policy. Out of those 62, there are only 6 that we have held for less than 5 years. That's about 9.6%. 20 of them have been held from 5 to 10 years. That's over 32%. And 36, 58% have been held for more than 10 years. And the board adopted a policy that I recommended back, I think in February of 2019, about dropping the price to a flat fee on some of these that have been held for a long time. We haven't done that. And one reason was because of the way this things were happening with the COVID and stuff, everything just sort of stopped for a while. But I've noticed at the end of the COVID, when people started bidding more, these that have been out there for a long time, they still aren't being bid on. So, I mean, they're just, I've actually had a couple people come in, and I told them about the $300 thing. They went and looked at it and said they weren't interested. So we still got a parcel that, passive parcel that we are maybe stuck with. But if the board has approved that policy, I have not really had to act at this point, but probably in the future, you're going to start seeing some of these come forward with a $300 or not more than that, but a smaller bid, and that's the reason for it. So if the board has any questions about the proposed policy or amendment to your policy?
Are there any questions for the board for Attorney Moorfield?
Rick, how do people know what properties are there?
We have a surplus property list that's on the website, and I haven't gone through to see what they've done, but I know I've asked that that be something that's very apparent. Yeah, I'll follow up on that. That's my first time seeing it, sir.
Well, if you guys, you want a motion?
Yes, sir.
If you guys would indulge me since I brought this up, I'd like to make a motion to accept the recommendations by this county attorney.
Second. It's been motion made and seconded. Are there any questions? Let's call for the vote. All in favor?
Unanimous.
Thank you.
Yes. Item M is grant of utility easement to the city of Fayetteville.
This is, the city, well, I guess it's PWC, but on behalf of the city, it's what changed their language and easements. They did go back and take some of the language that I just told all the people in the board not do in this easement. This is just for their new standard form of easement. It includes everything, water, sewer, optic, fiber cable, and this is actually for a sewer extension out to the Big Bend area. It's a parcel that has not been on the surplus property list, but it's owned by the city and the county prior to 2008. I don't know why it wasn't on surplus property. It's landlocked. And my recommendation to the board is to just offer this to the city. We paid the city $499.85 for their taxes for 2008, and we paid for the foreclosure costs. And my recommendation is to offer this to the city for $500 and they would look to it. Because again, this is one of those that's going to be stuck for a long time after we look at this. If the board wants to just go ahead and grant the city the easement, and this language is acceptable.
Are there any questions or comments? Commissioner Booth.
Mr. Chair, I move that we grant the utility easement to the city of Fayetteville and offer for sale the same parcel for $500.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
The final item is North Carolina DOT notice of necessity to relocate a grave at 7945 Camden Road.
NCDOT by statute is a state agency that has authority to relocate grave sites. This is a grave site located on a parcel in the 295 project. And the reason it's coming before the Board of Commissioners is because the Board of Commissioners under that same statute must direct and supervise the relocation of any grave sites. I've attached a copy, it was just emailed from the state DOT letterhead. Request for this, or notice of this, the location map provided by NCDOT. It doesn't show where the grave site would be relocated on the parcel. It just says it'll be relocated on the same parcel outside of the driveway. And the resolution that I propose is a resolution that just says that the board acknowledges the notice of this, finds that it's necessary and directs that DOT do this, disinterment, remove, and reinterment in compliance with the statute and provide a copy of the recorded certificate to the county attorney. That's all I ever, so we'll have a record of it, and that's the recommendation.
Are there any questions or comments? Yes, sir, Commissioner Booth.
Mr. Chair, I move that we allow the NCDOT and accept their notice of necessity to relocate a grave at 7945 Camden Road, and if you'd like, we can get a supervisor.
Is there a second?
Resolution.
Yeah, I'll drop the resolution.
Second.
All in favor? Thank you.
Thank you, board members. I'm going to go attend to a board of directors meeting. I will have Mr. Carl will be in here at this meeting. I'm going to have Mr. Hasty in here when you talk about the update to animal control ordinance, because he was the one who worked on that, if you have any legal questions about that.
Thank you.
May I be excused now, Mr. Chair?
Sir? Yes, thank you. Madam Manager.
Yes, sir. We'll move back up to the agenda to item 4A. This is a request to establish two positions in the sheriff's office. They're actually IT positions. They're based on contractual agreements between the sheriff and Hope Mills and Spring Lake. There's a budget ordinance amendment attached here as well, B 21-11-224. If I may, before we ask the Sheriff's Department to come forward, the County Manager's Office has worked with the Sheriff and his staff that are assembled here today. Also, Keith Todd, our IT Director, has been involved as well. As you know, Hope Mills and Spring Lake, we do the dispatch for both of those entities. And so they're a part of our CAD system. And so as an extension of them being a part of our CAD system, the sheriff has reached out to both of those entities and offered services for them to be a part of the sheriff's office records management system. And so those small towns struggle from an IT perspective. This assists them in that endeavor, but from safety and security from a system standpoint, it makes more sense for those entities to attach to our network and the CAD system and RMS through the Sheriff's Office. The Sheriff's Office proposes buying additional hardware and software to do that. Those towns have agreed to pay over a 4-year period for the equipment cost and pay 100% of the salaries and fringe benefits. And so this creates enhanced communication among law enforcement. And so I'll stop there. I'm not the technical person and I'm not the sheriff, but I promised him I would do an introduction, and I hope I've done that well. But they're here to answer any questions that you may have.
Fantastic.
Anybody have any?
Are there any comments or questions?
Are you going to make a motion? I'll second it.
Okay, that's what I'm saying, that after that presentation, unless you got a PowerPoint, you just really want to, I'll let you want the presentation.
Let them go on.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I move that we honor the request to establish Sheriff's Office IT positions based on contractual agreements with Hope Mills and Spring Lake and associated budget ordinance amendment B-211-224.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
You had talked to Mr. Chairman about after 2 hours to take a 5-minute break.
Absolutely.
You asked me to remind you, sir.
I appreciate it. We now go recess for 5 minutes. Madam Manager, please.
Yes, sir. That'll move us to item 4B, and this is health insurance plan changes related to pharmacy benefits. I'll turn this over to Vicki Evans, our Finance Director.
Thank you. Welcome, Mrs. Evans.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Today, over the go-to meeting, we have Kevin Quinn from USI. He's going to present an option to you regarding saving additional money for the county related to our pharmacy claims through rebates. And I had the presentation for this sent out to you in an email on Tuesday morning, and so that's why I didn't share the paper slides with you. But in addition, it's on a screen. Kevin?
Thank you, Vicki, and I want to thank the board for taking some more, I know you have a very busy day, for taking a few more minutes out of your time. I think you'll like what I have to say today. When I spoke in March, we were doing a lot of work behind the scenes, contractual work, to improve the prescription drug contract on behalf of Cumberland County. And we weren't quite ready with it a few months ago, and I do apologize for that, but the results we're going to talk about today are somewhat extraordinary. Over the last 2 years, pharmaceutical costs have exploded, And there's a couple of players involved with that. The pharmacy manufacturers, the PBMs, which are pharmacy benefit managers, and the insurance companies. They all work together to develop and deliver pharmaceuticals to your doorstep. There's a non-transparent functionality with regards to pharmacy claims that it's not that the insurance carriers, the pharmacy benefit managers are not sharing with their clients, and it's rebates from the manufacturers to the insurance companies and pharmacy suppliers have grown quite considerably. And this is not unique to Blue Cross Blue Shield of North Carolina. I just did a similar study with a 2,500 life accounting firm in the Northeast. So this is prevalent throughout the U.S. and a lot of work behind the scenes, again, to improve the contract that's in your favor. So I'm going to go very high level, and I'll be happy to take questions. In the past, Blue Cross Blue Shield said, we'll give you a very low monthly administrative fee at $19 per employee per month to pay our employees, to pay your claims, to do all the functions that Blue Cross does in order to pay claims for your employees and provide reports. Annually, that comes to $442,000. And $19, based on our book of business, both locally and nationally, is a very nice number because most of the time we see that in around the $40 range. In exchange, the insurance company says, we'll keep the rebates from the pharmaceutical companies, and this is for brand name drugs. And in the past, it's been kind of a wash. But in the last few years, these rebates have exploded. So USI has a specialty team to look at the contracts and negotiate with the insurance companies to say, wait a minute, what will it be if our client keeps those rebates? And then what will you charge us? Well, Blue Cross finally acquiesced and said, okay, Cumberland County can have the rebates going forward. I'll explain how that works in a minute. But we're losing money because we made money on the back end. Now, they wouldn't tell us how much money they made, but they started at a much higher fee of $45 and we negotiated to $33. So that increases the fixed costs to $769 annually for Blue Cross to continue to do what they've always been doing. And we've negotiated that for a 3-year rate guarantee, so they can't come back and claw back more money if they wanted to pad the profits. So we've protected ourselves in the back end. And so now our recommendation is for the county to keep these rebates. And this may be somewhat of a jaw-dropping number, but the projected rebates for 2022 is approximately $1.8 million from the pharmaceutical companies that will be returned to the county via check from Blue Cross and from from Blue Cross. And what happens is rebates are paid retrospectively. So after 6 months, we'll get our first check roughly in February or March of next year, but thereafter, every quarter we will be seeing rebates. And it's approximately almost a $5.5 to $6 million number over a 3-year period. And that that's it in a nutshell. And it's a big number. And and Vicki and Amy and Julie, we all worked together over the last 3 weeks because we thought it was extremely important that we get this in front of the board. So our recommendation is take the increased administrative charges. In return, we take the rebates back, and the county should win significantly over the next 3 years.
Okay, are there any questions or comments? Commissioner Key.
Real quick, it really sounds great on the surface, but you said something that made me have a little bit of concern. You said the last couple of years, your rebates have really gotten higher. We live in a pretty crazy town. All you gotta look at is the price of chicken wings. And, you know, our rebates gonna start coming back and be more scarce if we do this, and how quickly could you possibly be upside down? The numbers look great. The numbers look great.
You know, it's a great question. There's no guarantee. This is not that it's going to be 1.8 million. It's projected to be somewhere between 1.7 and 2 million, actually. If they come down, it will take quite a while for this industry to reduce these rebates, or it may take an act of Congress on a federal level to reduce these types of rebates. But with that said, there's nothing preventing us, and we do this every year, where we start working on the renewal in October, November, December with Vicki and team, to market and make sure that our contracts are as tight as possible with regards to this. So it would have to almost go away for you to lose. And an excellent question. We have clients throughout the country, 1,000, 2,000, 5,000 employees. We have very good benchmarks on what an administrative rate is from the insurance companies. They don't work for free, clearly, but a $35 to $45 administrative charge, if we're just marketing you tomorrow, we would see the insurance carriers, whether it's Blue Cross, whether it's whether it's Aetna, United, Cigna, and the Blues, they're called the BUCAs, B-U-C-A. They're most, even third-party administrators, specialty TPAs, smaller ones, are generally in this $35 to $45 range. Anything less than 35 is fair and reasonable.
Thank you.
Are there any more questions or comments? Is there a motion?
This is great news, and motion to accept.
Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you. All in favor? Thank you. Madam Manager?
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, and my goal is to see you in person next year.
Thank you.
Take care.
I wanted to make sure he disconnected. The next item is item 4C, is extension of the health and benefits brokerage and consulting agreement with USI. Vicki?
So Cumberland County has been working with staff of USI since the fall of 2017, when they assisted us with the unwinding of the HSA, the Health Savings Account compliance issues. In August of 2018, the Board of Commissioners agreed to a 2-year agreement with USI that is set to expire on December 31st of 2021, so the end of this year. We have the option to conduct an RFP process, or we could extend the agreement with USI for an additional 2 years. So as you just saw in the presentation before this item, USI has been an advocate of reducing costs for Cumberland County. In my memo for the agenda, I cited 2 examples that have or will result in multi-million-dollar savings for the county without causing current employees to pay higher out-of-pocket costs. And so the pharmaceutical rebates is one of those. And also, a couple years back, they made the recommendation that we implemented, which was to move the retirees age 65 and older to a fully insured plan.
I think you're overselling them because I think they're great. And you tell us what we need. Some of us, Jeanette, we've been through that other group.
Right.
These guys are proactive, they're good, and normally I like the RFP, but they are really good for our county. They are very proactive. So I'd like to make a motion we extend.
Are there any more comments or questions? If not, is there a motion?
My motion to extend for 2 years.
Is there a second? All in favor?
Thank you.
They're great, they're good.
I appreciate it. I'll send that to them as well.
Remember how long you had to?
Yes, ma'am.
That's one of the.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, item 4D is selection of state-centric hazard mitigation program option. Tracy Jackson, Assistant County Manager, will present this item, but we also have with us Steve McGugan from the state. Tracy, come forward.
Thank you, Manager, and good afternoon, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Joining us, we have our State Hazard Mitigation Officer, Steve McGugan. I'll introduce this item. The Hazard Mitigation State-Centric Implementation Program really deals with an ask from the state of 2 potential hazard mitigation grant sub-applicants like counties to opt in or out of allowing the state to administer hazard mitigation related grants. There are advantages to allowing the state to administer these grants, and Mr. McGugan will talk through some of that with us. And basically, it'll consist of the administration and management portion of these potential grants associated with hazard mitigation activities. But at this point, Steve, if you will, if you can just briefly introduce this topic for our board and cover some of the high points with us.
Hopefully you can hear me okay, and that will make this a very uncomplex explanation as possible. Thank you for allowing me to come in and speak with you today. What we're proposing as we move forward with the hazard mitigation program, as you know, the hazard mitigation program deals with both the FEMA non-disaster and disaster grants, of which Cumberland County has participated under Hurricane Matthew, Hurricane Florence. We are currently working some BRIC projects on Cumberland County's behalf. That's the Building Resilience in Infrastructure and Communities. And where we're trying to take the program to assist the communities is that the hazard mitigation program as it stands today is a reimbursement program. Means that when you, the community, are awarded your grant from FEMA, the state holds the money, you have to perform all the work, you have to pay all the bills, and then you put all that together, come back to the state, present all that to us, and then we can reimburse your community. The bad side of that is that you as the community have to obtain all the workers, whether it be contract or consultant workers. You as the community have to outlay all the funds, so you have to take that out of your operational budget and pay it, and you have to hold that bill until at such time you come back to the state and ask for the reimbursements, which we then process and move that money back to your community. Under the state-centric program, where we're attempting to go is to, one, increase the speed of the program so that we get the assistance to the disaster survivors as quickly as possible. Under state contracting and federal contracting rules as it is right now, when you receive that grant, if you have 10 homes that are to be acquired or 10 homes that are to be elevated, you as the community would have to individually bid out each of those homes. So that's 3 bids per home for each type of service that you need to be able to do the mitigation work that it requires. For the state's part, I would be receiving that award, and those 10 homes I could bid out as a total project. And then we could come in and do all 10 homes. That increases the speed because now we're only doing 1 bid versus up to 30 or 40 bids. It also saves you the money because now you're not having to outlay any funds because the bills are going to come directly to the state. So we will receive those bills directly from the contractor since they're working for us. And then the other piece that we built into this program is that all we ask from the county is that you provide us a POC, who is normally someone that you normally have do this program in the first place, but that person serves to be able, and I apologize, my phone's ringing on my desk, but that person serves to be able to talk to the citizens of your community and be that linkage between the state and between that person so that they have a local person to talk to. That POC will be on our project management team, so that they are there when we're picking out the contractors, they're there when we're setting up the project schedule, they're there so they can get any answers that are needed, so that person in the local community, when they have a question, they can immediately answer it, or if we have not provided them that information, they can get with us and we can do it. I will also have a project manager that's specifically hired for your community. And so from the state level, we're hiring a project manager that's dealing with the contractor. Your POC doesn't have to do that. And then the last piece that's a benefit to the community, all the work that your POC does on this project, anything they do in dealing with the community, any public meetings that we may set up, or any scheduled work, or any facilitation of the contractor to be on the ground, all that time is reimbursable. So you as a community would submit to us that time, that person's time, rate, and what they did to support that mission. We send it to us, and we will pay that bill, which also kind of offsets the effort that you're doing for this program to be able to get those monies reimbursed. In a nutshell, that's the State-Centric program. I'll kind of hold there and take any questions y'all may have with me.
Are there any questions or comments from the board? Yes, Commissioner.
Sorry, Steve. Okay. Got some questions about, first of all, is this been consistent? Is this been going on, or is this a new concept?
Mr. Commissioner, this is a brand new concept. We're going to, in fact, this is based on me, to let you know, this is my 2-year anniversary today working for you as a state hazard mitigation officer. I came in and observed the program, found out again in many communities, this is a very hard program for them to do. We put this program together, gotten it blessed by both the governor, Secretary Hooks, as well as FEMA, and we were the first program in the country to do hazard mitigation this way.
Well, I like the concept of the program, and I can see where in some very rural counties that it's really needed. My concern is the state becomes the gatekeeper of sorts for all the funding that it comes down, and I'm not sure if you approve the funding, but you're paying, you have your local POC and you're paying the contractors. Ultimately, those citizens are going to be coming to the elected officials if something is approved, is not approved, or there is some conflict between the county and the state about whether this is a worthwhile or accredited or a project. I'm just wondering who has the authority then to approve or disapprove an initiative by the county for FEMA funding?
So, Mr. Commissioner, this won't change how the program works. So when you put in your projects to start, the state puts the application together, sends it to FEMA. FEMA approves the application, the funding comes back, and then again, normally we would hold that funding and then give you a grant agreement and tell you to go do the work. All we're doing now is if you approve this program, is we'll launch right into it, working with your POC to get those folks assistance. It doesn't change funding streams, and it doesn't change approval processes.
So the approval area still comes from the county? That they submit that these are disaster relief projects?
Yes, sir. You start everything up to us.
But the state cannot, and therefore disapprove something as approved by FEMA?
That's correct, sir. I can't take it out unless, the only reason that I can disapprove a project is if we get on the ground and find a condition that was not honest with what the application was.
Sure. Okay.
Are there any more questions or comments? If not, there.
How about a motion to approve? I like what I'm hearing, something that possibly the state should have been involved with a long time ago. I think it's a great idea. My motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
So, Mr. Chairman, we're asking for this to be moved forward as a consent agenda item on May 17th.
Yes.
And recommending that the county opt into the state's plan.
Mr. Chair, pass discussion. Just to remember for the board, Hurricane Matthew, the state went through 4 different, I think they're on the 4th different agency, and the rules changed a lot as we were going through. I mean, I do like the concept of it, I do, but when the state's in control, the state's in control, and we were promised millions and millions of dollars that ended up not coming to Cumberland County. because they changed the rules and the agencies. So, just put that out.
Okay, I call on the vote to move to the consent agenda for our next meeting. All in favor?
That is unanimous.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Goodman.
Okay, thank you all very much. Please let me know if you have other questions. I'm glad to come answer them.
Thank you.
Madam Manager.
Yes, sir.
They were making for us.
That could be true too.
Mr. Chairman and Commissioners, the next item is item 4E, revisions to the animal control ordinance. And as Elaine Smith, our Animal Control Director, comes forward, I do want to remind you that these changes were presented some time ago. They were asked to go back and talk to the towns, municipalities, law enforcement. They've done that. And so today, Elaine is going to do a brief review of the proposed changes and get your feedback. So with that, I'll ask Ms. Smith to come forward.
We appreciate you being here, Ms. Smith.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and Commissioners. Mr. Miller assists me with these things. I'm going to go through this. Yes, ma'am.
Wait a minute. There's nothing new that you have not already told us about.
Everything is in your packet and it
Yeah,
is
we received it.
essentially the same change you're asking for.
It makes good sense to me, so I was going to make a motion.
Okay, we'll entertain that in just a minute, but I would like for her to go through what she needs to go through for the listening audience.
Okay. I'm going to go very quickly then.
Sorry.
I will go very quickly then, and if there is something that you do wish to have further clarification on, please just holler. You got it? Okay, all right, we're going to just go ahead with this. So the ordinance changes again is to promote responsible pet ownership, increase adoptions, achieve other goals. It will address specific issues encountered by our staff. And we have presented these proposed changes to the municipal leaders in the Mayor's Coalition and also to law enforcement in the county, and we have had no significant opposition or any opposition to any of these changes. So again, going quickly, we need to make some changes to the wording regarding the Animal Services Board. These were changes that were previously approved and never were put in the actual written ordinance. Secondly, changing and adding definitions of breeding, show, and hunting dogs, simply because those terms are used in the ordinance, but they have no set definition. Also, we're asking to add conviction of cruelty to animals to the designation of nuisance reckless owner, so we have the ability to ban ownership of animals for 3 years for those folks. Thirdly, disease, injured, or sick animals. Right now, it just says people who have those animals need to either euthanize or seek treatment at a private veterinarian. We're offering the option that they can surrender them to us. We may be able to help that animal and get it adopted. Lastly, the found animal requirements. If a property owner impounds an animal that they find on their property, currently it requires that they run an ad in the newspaper. Fayetteville Observer no longer offers free ads except for an online option for 2 days, so we just need to update this to make it more with current guidelines. We just want folks to notify our department if they find an animal, and then we'll take care of directing them to the appropriate publications or websites. Nuisance animals, there are a lot of processes outlined in the ordinance. It gets very specific. We would like to reduce that and put that into our SOPs instead, simply because each situation is different, and people sometimes reading the ordinance get unrealistic expectations that we are going to be able to go out and seize animals or whatever it is they feel needs to be done, and it may not be what's in the best interest of our department and the pet owners. So we would like to have it a little bit more covered in our processes rather than in the ordinance. Yes, sir.
How do these be considered nuisance animals?
They're wildlife, so we do not have any actions regarding wildlife unless it is sick, injured, or inside the living space of a residence. That is
Some calls
correct.
we're beginning to see within the city.
Right, and we can give them information on who to contact with wildlife, with state wildlife. And we can give them some just general information as well. So we will help folks, but we cannot handle wildlife. By law, we cannot handle it unless it's inside the living space or sick or injured. So again, just asking those specific processes be moved out of the ordinance and into our SOPs as they are currently. Inhumane cruel treatment, that's simply moving a section so that it combines cruelty ordinances into one section. The third one on here, control of animals, just to clarify what running at large is. Currently, if somebody has their dog on their own property, but it's not on a leash, we would like for it to be a little clearer that the pet does need to leave their property to be considered running at large. And the fourth one is under records and dispositions of animals. It is to allow us as a department to reduce or waive fees with prior approval from the county manager. So this would be for big events like clear the shelters, or if there is a specific time of the year like summer months when there's a lot of overcrowding, to potentially do some adoption specials to encourage people to adopt and get more animals out of the shelter in an appropriate manner. And then there are two things under there that deal with adoptions of animals by employees and returns of animals. We feel those are more appropriately handled in the SOPs. Redemption of animals. I'm going to discuss the licensing part further down, so that's partially under here because it mentions licensing, but mostly here it's just add a microchip as a requirement for somebody who reclaims their animal. That's the only way to really permanently identify an animal. Can't be removed or altered. Spaying or neutering as a condition. Again, this is for folks that are reclaiming their pet. The idea is to just kind of clean up this section, make it a little clearer, and require that folks have a current rabies vaccine on their pet in order to get this exemption, and also allow pets that have perhaps medical conditions that make spaying or neutering not medically recommended, give them that option that their veterinarian can give them the exemption. Yes, sir.
Thank you. That's probably one of the things that happens more times than not, is somebody, it sounds like if they were picked up, then there's a requirement before the owner gets the bag that the pet becomes spayed or neutered. Is there a provision if this is an AKC or a registered?
That is the breeding, show, and hunting dogs, and yes, so that is where it mentions that the director can offer a one-time exemption for breeding, show, or hunting dogs, because people then say, well,
one time to the pet or one time to the owner?
One time for the pet is the way we interpret it. Maybe, I hadn't thought of it in that term, but we say per pet. But that's why I'm asking for a definition of what is a show dog. So it requires that they have a pedigree and that they have some documentation of that. Otherwise, everybody's dog is a show dog.
More question. But, okay, is there an appeal process?
There is. We essentially tell them this is the, what I normally do is if someone is questioning this, I tell them they are more than welcome, of course, to seek legal counsel and contact the county attorney's office. The appeal process would be, there's a standard appeal process for any animal that's been impounded. So Rob, I'd have to kind of defer to you on the legal components of that, but I essentially tell folks if they are asking for an exemption and I am not willing to grant it because they do not meet the standards that I consider appropriate, then I tell them they are more than welcome to get an attorney or contact your office regarding legal measures.
That's correct. We'll go over with the ordinance to see if it meets the requirements, and it still can be worked out, but there is a period process.
So again, this would just add, like I said, that they have a current rabies vaccine. We do run into that. If they don't even have that, then we feel that they haven't shown enough to be responsible for breeding their pet.
We're very passionate about their pets.
They are, yes, sir. Let's see, keeping of animals. So this is about the minimum standards. We're just asking that instead of having a list of minimum standards, there is some provision that an animal services officer can say this is not adequate for this pet. Sometimes just a doghouse and shelter and shade is not enough for, let's say, a very small dog or an elderly dog or a young puppy. So we would like for the officers to have the authority to impound an animal if it's not in appropriate circumstances. We are asking to add spay or neuter to the requirements if someone chooses to purchase a tethering permit, because for obvious reasons, any animal that's tethered is likely to then reproduce. And the last one is to require a security bond or cash from owners of impounded animals. This is primarily with cruelty cases. Sometimes animals are picked up for that, and we may have them for months. And unless, we have to wait for a court case, for restitution, in the meantime, these animals sit and decline in mental and physical health at the shelter. So we would like to have there be some sort of means for the owner to be required to pay for this ahead of time, and if they're not unwilling or unable to do that, then it allows the animal to become legally our property to do what's right for it. Lastly is the wild dog section. That's essentially all of that is covered under the dangerous dog and potentially dangerous dog ordinances. The ability for us to seize it, to take lethal containment measures if needed, so it's a redundant section. The limit. The current ordinances allow us to deal with situations such as nuisance, sanitation, breeding without permits, things like that. What we have found is that the limit in and of itself does not give us any further means to prevent those types of behaviors. What it does do is it forces us to be forced to tell someone that they have to give up their pet, even if there are no problems with that pet, as nuisance or anything like that. This then becomes a problem because legally we cannot seize an animal from a person that is their personal property. We have to have a warrant to do that, which means we have to involve law enforcement, and law enforcement is somewhat unwilling to devote time to go and seize animals that are not a public threat, not a problem. So it's proven to be somewhat of a sticky situation for us, and we would prefer to deal with these on the issue itself and not just the number of animals. The breeding permit, we just asked to change that to a litter permit. It's essentially the same, but instead of asking them to purchase this permit just for breeding, it is with the litters there. It's a lot easier to approve a litter than breeding. The temporary dangerous dog permit, we don't do that. Either they get the permit or the animal has to immediately and directly leave the county. So we don't really have a need for those. The rabies, the last one on this page is the rabies ordinance currently does not match the state requirements, so we just are trying to make sure that it does that. And also, it currently states that animal carcasses are to be surrendered to the health department, and I feel that Dr. Green probably does not want that to happen. They come to us anyway, so we just want to change that. Licensing. Pet licensing has the revenue has declined rapidly and significantly over the last 5 or 6 years, and it has reached the point where the revenue generated is not making up for the amount of labor and the costs for mailing, postage, the fees we pay to our database company. So it has a very shrinking benefit or return, so we are just asking to just eliminate the licensing altogether. The next one is our Injured Animal Fund. This is just changing some wording. Currently, Injured Animal Fund is very specific. We're trying to make it a little more open so that we can provide care with these funds to more animals, and it's not so restrictive. Selling live animals just deals with 501c3 organizations that may be out on public places, just clarifying who is permitted to do that and who is not. The last one on this is to ban roosters inside the municipal limits, the corporate limits of any municipality in the county. I think this is something that you've probably all gotten calls about, so we're happy to do this. Roosters are not necessary for any purpose. And then these last two, one is the enforcement. That's basically covered in all the other ordinances as far as giving us the authority to enforce. And penalties for violations, the last one is a fine on a bite for a dog, and its intent, I believe, years ago was to prevent dog bites. It did not have any effect on that, and it's really an unnecessary fine and something that ends up becoming rather arbitrary because it doesn't designate the severity of the bite or anything like that. So we are asking to remove that. So we are recommending that the board rescind the Chapter 3 Animal Control Ordinance from the Cumberland County Code of Ordinances and replace it with the proposed Animal Services Ordinance, and request that this be moved forward as an item of business at the May 17th regular meeting. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Well, this is a county ordinance.
Correct.
We do enforcement for the cities, for the
Yes.
city of Fayetteville, and now in Fort Bragg.
Yes. Well, we don't do enforcement at Fort Bragg. That's still through the military police. We are just there sheltering and transport.
Yes, sorry, yes. But the question is, sorry, is the goal to have everybody enforce this the same?
Yes, sir. And the Mayor's Coalition, that was what we proposed. And as I said, there was no opposition. Chairman Evans was at the meeting as well. I think you can.
Thank you.
Okay.
Are there any more questions or comments? Before you leave, are you doing, on television about the microchip, are you all doing the microchip? Is that your series that's on television I'm looking at?
Are we doing
About the microchip for animals?
We don't have anything currently out. That's something we do in our shelter for animals being reclaimed. We can, it's something certainly we endorse and promote.
Mm-hmm.
Are you asking for if we?
No, I was asking because I thought it was very interesting. I was getting ready to give you the credit for doing it.
Yes, absolutely. That's 100% our.
Is there a motion for acceptance of?
I will, but I want to first congratulate you because some of these things had been on the books for years. You're doing a good job of cleaning it all up.
Thank you, ma'am. We are trying to simplify and make things easier for everyone involved,
and make it more useful. So I will move that we rescind Chapter 3 and replace it with the Animal Service.
Thank you, Commissioner. Council, is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, sir. All in favor?
Unanimous.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Elaine, can you give us some information about the coyotes and wildlife? Maybe send it to
Yes,
us.
sir.
Because I get the same calls Commissioner Lancaster did.
I'll be happy to get to that.
Madam Manager.
Yes, sir. Item 4F is a text amendment to Chapter 4, Article 4 of the Minimum Housing Code. Ross Howard, our Planning and Inspections Director, is here today. Come forward, Mr. Howard.
Welcome, and thank you for being so patient.
My pleasure, Commissioner. So the item that's before you this afternoon is a text amendment to Chapter 4 of the Cumberland County Code of Ordinances. Chapter 4, for those of you that may not know, is simply our building section. It is specifically it's the section of the county code that regulates building inspections and the methods by which we do those inspections. And what we're talking about here this afternoon is the minimum housing section of that Chapter 4. So specifically, the text amendment that we are requesting for the board to consider is to make the Board of Adjustment serve as the housing appeals board for the county. We are asking this for a few reasons. One is, first and foremost, is we do have a citizen appeal that's been filed that's been hanging out for a while. We don't have a housing appeals board as it sits right now. I don't think it's been filled for quite some time. So we're trying to address the citizen concern. Two, staff feels as though that with the amount of appeals that we hear throughout the year, I could probably count on both hands how many appeals we would probably hear. And we feel like there's probably not enough business to justify having a separate board meet as a standalone body. If you know anything about these types of hearings, they are quasi-judicial and evidentiary in their very nature. So we thought that with the Board of Adjustment, they are the quasi-judicial land use body for the county. So we thought that the work program that the Housing Appeals Board would be doing would just naturally flow into their work program. And when we looked around at how other people do it throughout the state, I will tell you it's not uncommon to have the Board of Adjustment serve as the housing appeals body for your jurisdiction. So that's what we are proposing here for today. We are asking that it go on as a public hearing at the 17th board meeting.
Are there any questions or comments from the board?
Well, since the appeal, we used to get, Jeanette, you remember, we used to get these things all the time. Yeah, I bet we haven't seen one in 2 or 3 years.
Are you talking about an appeal or an order for?
Well, is the appeal if the commissioners say, no, you have 30 days to take it down or the building will be, torn down and you'll be all that. Or we say that, you know, we're gonna give you another 60 or 120 days. If they don't like that, is that the appeal, or is the appeal from your department saying your house is out of compliance and therefore we're gonna take it down and you're gonna have a public hearing in front of the commission?
It's the latter, what you just mentioned.
Okay, so we'll never see one again if we pass this. It'll all go to the Board of Adjustments.
No, the appeal would happen. So like, okay, so if I have an officer that goes out and says that you need to fix this, this, and this, there is a hearing for that officer. It's all spelled out in a timeline, and it can take 60, 90 days to be able to go through all of this. So that person has a specific time to be able to say, to fix it. They come in, they talk to the code enforcement officer. That officer will lay out the procedure of what needs to be fixed in order to meet the minimum standards of our code. If they say, I don't believe you, I don't agree with you, it would go to the housing appeals bodies, just like if there's a zoning case that goes to the Board of Adjustment for a variance or setbacks or any of that other stuff. It's the same way with the housing appeals body. They serve as the referee to say what needs to be fixed or if anything needs to be fixed at all. So it's more of just an appeal hearing for them to be able to work out the differences between interpretation between the building owner and the code officer. Past that, if they have an order after that that it doesn't get repaired, then it goes to an order to demolish before this board. And so that's when we bring it as pretty much the final step.
Okay.
When you guys see it, that's the final step. We work through a whole range of different things with the owner to try to get him to clean it up.
All right, understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, are there, any more questions or comments? If not, is there a motion?
I make the motion, we're gonna move it forward to the next agenda session, and, that's the motion, yes.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, ma'am. It's been moved and properly seconded. Are there, all in favor?
Could I have the motion repeated, please?
Should be commissioners.
You said move to the next agenda session.
I'm sorry. We're gonna move it to our next meeting.
May 17th.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
And we'll be holding, we have to hold a public hearing. Mr. Howard has already advertised that, so you'll see this listed Monday evening as a public hearing.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Howard.
you.
Our
Madam
next-
Manager.
Yes, sir. Our next agenda item is a commissioner's meeting room update. I'm going to ask our county engineer Jermaine Walker to come forward. This is an item that was originally discussed at your April session. I think there was a tour. Mr. Walker's going to talk about that and ask about some direction about how we move forward. Mr. Walker.
Welcome, Mr. Walker.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, on April 8th, during the Board of Commissioners agenda session, a representative from Wooten Company presented two meeting room concepts. One was for room 118, downstairs 118, 119, and the other was for the conversion of the historic courthouse courtroom. So to recap, Wooten Company identified the following costs for each one of the proposed renovations. So for room 118 and 119, that was somewhere around $2.2 million. And then for the historic courtroom, coming in somewhere around $2.6 million. Keeping that in mind, the cost estimate for the historic courthouse, the renovation for that courtroom did not include elevator modernization, which we believe is going to be included in the CIP for FY22, which is roughly $250,000. Second floor bathroom renovations and ADA upfits, the addition of an executive meeting room for the commissioners, technology, infrastructure improvements, and then also taking that into consideration, upgrades to the service panel and the plumbing for the technology infrastructure improvements and for the addition of the male and female restrooms. Attached in your packets is a proposal from Wooten to complete additional work, to add additional scope and that's to the cost of $4,775. And once we come into an agreement with Wooten, that's going to be completed 28 days after the proposal. Working in parallel, on May 3rd, the Engineering and Infrastructure Department solicited a request for qualification for General Government Services Building, Space Utilization and Site Analysis Study, focusing on the departments located in the Judge E. Maurice Braswell Courthouse, the old Highsmith Rainey Hospital, which is the Bradford Building, the historic courthouse, and the intent is to consolidate appropriate functions into one purpose-built facility for the General Services Building. This RFQ closes on May 28th at 5 p.m. And so now, what we are seeking is guidance from the Board of Commissioners. Does the board wish to move forward with the expanded scope? And just recapping on the expanded scope, what that means is the addition of the male and female restrooms on the second floor, the opening of the balcony and the vestibule space on the floor of the courthouse, and the technology and power system upgrades. So, does the board wish to move forward with the expanded scope of work for Wooten Company as we begin the General Government Services Building Space Utilization and Site Analysis Study?
Thank you. Are there any questions, concerns, or just discussions about which, because staff is seeking guidance on this to move forward or not to move forward with it? Yes, Commissioner Keith.
Right.
Yes, sir.
You said some of this, that we're upfitting some of the building anyway, right? The elevator, we were gonna put some money into the historic courthouse. I mean, ultimately, if it's gonna be a public building, it will have to have male and female bathrooms at sometime, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, if we keep it. But we also had the elevator already in the budget as the CIP.
Yes, sir, for FY22.
Okay. And the company is just asking for $4,700 in addition for the scope?
In addition to come up with an adjusted cost and a preliminary design. So,
Staff, Madam Manager, I had asked about some history on this particular courthouse.
Yes, sir. Sally, you come to the microphone.
Yes, sir, local and state history has pulled together a file, a very large file of all the history for that. And so I can share that. I was able to reach out to them and they've pulled together that. There's a digital, it spans back to when the building was created, plus all the other courthouses within the county as well.
So you said that there's an extended file on this courthouse, and you have it where? Where do you have the file?
It's digital. It's
digital?
Yeah, digital files that they have scanned through newspapers and other materials. Yeah.
Okay. Are there any other questions, comments, for what direction would we like? Yes, Commissioner Stewart.
This, the old courthouse.
Thank you.
That would be something temporary, a temporary move. If I recall during the conversation, we were talking about moving over there temporarily because, is that not correct?
I think that would be the permanent.
So,
It would be permanent.
yes, so yes, ma'am, the options that were presented were to renovate either room 118 downstairs or renovate the historic courthouse, that hearing room, as a permanent meeting room.
Okay, my question is, my question is, when we were talking about building this new building, this administration building, what was that? What was going to be included in that building?
Yes, sir. Actually, it expands beyond an administration building. What we would call it is a general government services building, and the goal would be to be more citizen-friendly and have services together. We have tax over here, we have mapping over here, but we have planning and inspections over here. Citizens, customarily, if they need to go to planning and inspections, they'll need something from the tax office or mapping or the register of deeds. So the goal is to bring services together, community development, planning and inspections, and general government services to make more of a one-stop shop.
Okay. So, what is the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, if we're looking for direction,
Yes.
I'd like to throw something out. I've looked at both places, I've looked at both plans. This building was built, and I believe authorized by the commissioners in 1922. It's been 50 years since we've been in this building, 1972. And there's a lot of advantages that I see at the historic courthouse. But I think probably one of the best one is the cost differential is very minimal when you break it down to it. But if a general services office building is built, we very well maybe put some money into a building that we may not be using in the next couple of years. Putting money into the historic courthouse does a couple things for us. It allows us to continue to have meetings with the public in our existing area for the commissioner's room, and then while the renovation is going on at the other building, and then we can just seamlessly move over to the other one. If we decide to stay in this courthouse and invest the money here, the commissioners will be displaced for almost 9 months to 12 months, having to go around and have meetings in here or some other location. So purely from a logistical standpoint, cost differential is not much. Plus, the historic courthouse is really, it's a shining star that the public should have better access to. I'd like to make a recommendation that we put on the agenda for discussion, that we consider the historic courthouse as the new commissioner's meeting room. Is that what you wanted?
Let me clarify, Commissioner Keefe. Are you saying to come back at Monday's meeting, the 17th, to come back and ask the board to declare that as the official room and then move forward with the additional study by, I just want to make sure.
My motion would be to authorize the $4,700. Okay, for the additional study. Just with Commissioner Booth and Commissioner Adams not here, I wanted them to have something, I don't know where they are on this, but I think it's only appropriate that they have some feedback on this also, but are you looking for a decision soon?
Well, we were asked to bring this back the next month, and so we wanted to follow through with that and bring it back. So it's up to you about the timing. We just wanted to meet your timeline.
Okay, let me scale back. I'd like to make a motion, we approve the $4,700 and some odd dollars for the
next step
with the funding.
Is there a second?
Second to that.
All in favor?
Voting in favor, Commissioners Lancaster, Keefe, Evans, and Stewart. Voting in opposition, Commissioner Council.
So, ma'am?
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Council.
Jeanette's fine. My opposition is that it's going to take, and I know we keep asking staff to do more and more work, but that's going to be an expensive undertaking, any way we look at it. And I think we need to do a little bit more future planning. And I don't think this historic courthouse is it. That's just me. Because the whole building is decrepit.
Well, I think that we have an opportunity to once again discuss it whenever it goes to the agenda item for the meeting on the 17th.
Because it'll be an item of business since it was not a unanimous vote.
Exactly.
Oh, is that why? So I needed to be unanimous? You good.
Yes, Madam Manager.
Item 4H is renewal of a lease agreement with Easter Seals UCP of North Carolina and Virginia, Inc. And Tracy Jackson, our Assistant County Manager, will present this item.
Welcome again, sir.
Yes, sir. Good afternoon. So joining us this afternoon, we have Amanda Hurlbert. She is the Center Manager with Easter Seals at the Northeast Clean Hour Building. And we also have Cheryl Tooney, who is the Chief Marketing Officer with Easter Seals. So thank you for joining us today. Just it's straightforward. It's a lease renewal. This lease will expire June 30th, 2021. I will note that all the damages from the January 2020 fire have been addressed and improvements have been made to the building. Terms of the lease are proposed to remain unchanged from the current lease, and staff is requesting permission to move this item forward to the May 17th consent agenda for approval of an initial resolution and intent to lease and the required 30-day advertising. I'm glad to try to answer any questions you might have.
Are there any comments or questions? If not, do I hear a motion?
Comments?
Yes, Commissioner Keith.
I talked about this 5 years ago, and I'll talk about it again. The Easter Seals is actually the North Carolina and Virginia, they're out of Raleigh. They are a multi-million-dollar corporation. Because it's Easter Seals, we agreed to do it for $1 a year in a space where the county is actually paying rent in other places at standards of $4 to $9 a square foot. And this is a 13,000 square foot building contiguous to Fayetteville Technical Community College that is being used. This particular Easter Seals group has $85 million that they brought in last year. They spent a lot of it in it, but they also spent $3.5 million on facilities last year, according to their 990. So I think that it is in their budget to be reasonable. I would like to hear a justification why $1 a year for a 3,000, a very, very valuable piece of property is justified. I know it's Easter Seals and everybody thinks it's great, but they have funding. And before I could support it, I'd like to know why they believe that this is a fair rent.
Are there any comments?
Would you come forward, please?
Welcome.
Thank you. Commissioner, thank you very much, and thank you for your comments. We were prepared for that question because it does seem like it makes sense, right? If you look at our books, we do, our annual revenue is $83 million. And as the Chief Marketing Officer, who is not only responsible for marketing and communications, I'm also responsible for fundraising. So I can tell you that 2020 was a tough year for fundraising. It's tough anyway. For the building that we have there on Holt Road, we run at a deficit, so the agency is providing outside of the rent payments. We do supplement any costs that are needed. We've taken great care of the building. We've made improvements to the building. We invite all of the commissioners to take a tour of the building at any time to see what we're doing in the community. Before COVID, we were servicing more than 90 families. Now we are a fraction of that. On June 1st, we're going to increase again. We are the only facility in the local area that not only will take care of children and their families if there is a disability or has some type of physical or developmental challenge. And so we're not breaking up families to have one child go to one school and another go to another. They can all come to our school right there and be serviced. In addition to that, if our facility were to close and the children that we serve were to go to the regular schools, they would be in special ed classes, but they'd be in special ed classes that could be 20 to 1 instead of 6 to 1. We have for every sixth child, we have one person versus 20 to 1. And so the other advantage that they have of being with us is that they can also emulate and see children that do not have the same disabilities and how they are progressing. And as you know, children like to emulate others. And so it helps their progression and it helps them to mature and to learn and to develop faster. So I am certainly asking that outside of what it looks like on the books. I am not here asking for anything. If we could afford it, if it was something that we could do, we would absolutely do that. But I am here on behalf of our agency and advocating and asking if for another 3 years we could have the same lease agreement. It certainly would help us, but more importantly, it would help the children that are in the community.
How long were you closed because of the fire?
We closed, the fire was the second week of January of 2020. We reopened, it was roughly a month later at a temporary location. We rented a building off of Rim Road. And we were there for exactly 1 month before we closed for COVID. So we opened middle of February, we closed for COVID March 13th.
And so have you reopened yet?
Yes.
When did you reopen?
We reopened when the schools went to Plan B on, I believe it was March 15th, 18th. We went to serve our 4 and 3-year-olds, so our children that have IEPs are there, and then our NC3K students. And then June 1st, we're bringing in a 2-year-old room, and then children that are leaving for the summer. We have children that have been waiting since the fire in January 2020 to come back to us.
So what happened to all the children while y'all were closed?
A lot of them actually stayed home. For COVID, you're speaking during that time, or for any of it?
For the services you provide. I mean, the schools were closed too, so.
Yeah, a lot of the children stayed home. We did offer virtual services for our families that did have their children at home. We offered 2 virtual sessions a day. Very few of the families that were displaced from the fire actually went somewhere else. And if they did, they requested a call back to come back whenever we reopened.
Well, and you give a very passionate thing, and fundraising was difficult, but the grant money did come and help some people, some organizations out, and it seems like you were able to be successful with some of the grants that you were able to get. Part of our job is stewardship, and it's everything from human services to funding and everything else. And I just felt like $1 a year with, a large corporation that, was there something that a little bit more fair to both of us? But it all comes down to the boots, so it doesn't matter that much.
Are there any more comments or questions? Commissioner
Jeanette, poor chairman, never gets a chance to ask a question. But have we ever asked Amy, FTCC, if there was a need for this space?
No, ma'am, I haven't.
I know that I have some concerns also, because we are hurting for space in county government, period, as well as both the school system and FTCC. So I wondered if there was a compromise somewhere that while we explored it a little bit further, whether or not we could do this for a year instead of 3 years.
Certainly,
I know that's not, and this is Now, you know you cause tears, don't you? This is a tearjerker situation here. I recognize that. But, and I know you don't want just a year, but would you accept just a year to give us a chance to look at our needs and our space needs and, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera?
As we consider the compromise, can I throw a caveat out there? As you look at your needs and what you're looking at, can I invite the commission to come to our facility so that as you make your decision, you can actually see the services that we are providing and the services that quite honestly will go away. And so if there is an opportunity for you to visit our services and maybe talk to some of the families that we serve, yes, I am here and I am pulling at your heartstrings because that's what Mr. Smith is. We are here for our families. And I do understand, because as a business person, I do understand the need for space. So I hear your compromise and I am certainly at your mercy. And if you tell me that we have to go for a year, I feel like I don't have a choice but to accept, but I do ask that we do have an opportunity to really explore and show you what we do bring to the community.
It's not that I don't think that you bring a lot to the table, but when we did this to start with, I got some questions. I received questions about why. You know, we would do this for Easter seals and not do it for other educational entities. And I'm sorry, I never brought it up before, but it's a legitimate question. Because we just went out and rented some space.
Can I answer the question as to why us versus another educational? I think what differentiates us is that we are not just a daycare center, even though we accept everyone in the community. We have specialists that are there that can take care of children with intellectual and developmental disabilities. And I think that is different from what some of the other educational organizations can specialize in. That can they provide it? Absolutely. But can they specialize and have that close one-on-one connection? So that would be my response to this.
Pre-COVID, 90, between 90 and 92.
90 and 100. Okay, I knew it was somewhere less than.
It will be, June 1st will be at 36, and then we're going to open at 36. And we'll be opening rooms at a time. So our rooms hold up to 18 children. So, and we've had a wait list the whole time. I talked to a mother today that's been waiting on us since January 2020. It was at the center in like 30 minutes to pick up paperwork and so to come back. So,
Yeah, that's a heart-stricken question. Would you not think that I was Scrooge by asking for a year?
So, Commissioner, I don't think you're a Scrooge because, like I said, prior to joining the nonprofit, I've been in corporate, I have been an entrepreneur, so I know the side of business. So I absolutely 100% know what you're up against. So no, I would not think that you're a Scrooge. I just have to make that impassioned plea because now that I do represent the organization, I know what we bring to the community.
I know, but I want to ask for a year instead of 3 years.
Okay, before we, are you finished? I'm sorry, Commissioner. I'm sorry, Jeanette. I'm sorry. But, ma'am, quick question. When did, Amy, when did we start this with this organization with the year rental?
So, Mr. Chairman, this facility was purchased and owned by the Mental Health Authority, the LME, Local Mental Health Authority, many years ago. and these services were provided in that facility at that time. And so I believe that Easter Seals had a relationship with the local mental health entity. When we divested of our LME, we began to work with Alliance and others about that service. That they are correct. I am a board member of Partnership for Children, and one of the gaps in the community are services for developmentally delayed children. And so at that time, we were approached about continuing to allow this building to be utilized for those services. And so I think we have been doing this probably...
2004, I believe.
Yes.
Since 2004.
Yes, sir. That's just a little bit of history.
Okay. In all fairness to Commissioner Council's question about educational agencies, what other educational agencies have presented themselves to us for assistance?
I've not been approached by anyone about utilizing this building other than Easter Seals. I've not been approached.
It hasn't been on the market either.
Okay.
Well, I didn't mean for sale, Commissioner Keith. I just meant for the same arrangement.
Okay. Going back to, God, I can't think of the organization name right now, but I'm sorry, I can't. But out on the individuals that disabilities would provide.
Vision Resources.
The Vision Resources Center. Aren't they doing the same thing? As far as, not with the children, but I'm talking about as far as the rental, yes, the lease agreement.
This is the most unique lease that we have, in that we lease the building to the Easter Seals for $1 a year. However, in the lease, they do all the building maintenance, repairs to the parking lot, that type of thing. For Vision Resource Center, we lease that house. The rate is not market rate rent, but their rent is higher than $1.
Okay.
So this is unique to Commission.
But theirs also includes utilities, janitorial, landscaping, and everything else, and only pay $200. The other group, not you.
Yeah, I don't remember.
Yeah, so we actually lose money on that one. We don't lose money with the Easter Seals, but it's just once a meeting there.
Okay. Well,
To Commissioner Keith's points, our leases are not fully consistent.
okay. Well, I think I really think that's the responsibility of the board as to individuals that we rent to and how we handle these particular properties when a nonprofit comes to us about it.
Yes.
And so with that being said, I would like to make a motion that we approve. Did you make your motion already? As far as the extending for a year? I would like, that was a motion?
That was a motion.
Okay, well, I'm sorry. Can I ask you for an amendment to that motion?
Sure.
What I would like to make the motion of, that we approve renting this to this organization for a year. No, I'm sorry, not a year, just period. That we continue to rent to this organization for $1. That's my motion.
Continue in which way, Mr. Chairman?
The current lease terms?
Yes, the current lease terms, yes.
You want me to withdraw my motion?
If you don't mind.
So, Mr. Chairman,
I didn't have a second.
when you're saying continue, the question was for the next 3 years?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I'll
Yes, sir.
second that.
Yes, sir. All in favor?
Yes, sir.
Voting in favor, Commissioners Lancaster, Chairman Evans, Commissioner Stewart, voting in opposition, Commissioners Keith and Council, the motion carries.
Next item, Madam Manager.
Yes, sir.
5 years.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have another lease up for renewal, and this is one with Cumberland County Communicator, and I'll ask Mr. Jackson to present this item.
Okay, so we have another lease. This one is with Communicare, and it will expire June 30, 2021. The terms for lease are proposed to remain unchanged from the current lease. The staff is requesting permission to move this item forward to the May 17th consent agenda for approval of the initial resolution and intent to lease ad and the required 30-day advertising. Questions?
To make it easy, I'll support this, but I would like to throw out the inconsistencies as the manager. Okay, we're getting $3 a square foot on this one, but we're paying utilities, and I don't know if we're paying janitorial for this project, but we're asking another service organization, and we're getting $3 a square foot for them, who is important in the community also. So, I mean, I don't have any problems with it, but there is inconsistencies in the leases.
Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Yeah,
All in favor?
yeah.
Unanimous?
I'm not getting caught in that anymore.
And you know what, and Commissioner Keith mentioned about inconsistencies, maybe one day soon or something we would talk about this, put this on an agenda item
Yes, sir.
so we be uniform. Yes, ma'am.
Item 4J is professional services agreement with Innovative Emergency Management to administer the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Ms. Dee Taylor, our Community Development Director, is here to present this item. Welcome, Dee.
Welcome, Ms. Taylor.
Good afternoon, Mr.
I must
Chair.
say we enjoyed you being with us on WIDU the other day. You gave some very valuable information. Thank you for being with us.
It was a pleasure. Good afternoon. As you are aware, Cumberland County was awarded approximately $3.7 million from the U.S. Department of Treasury to administer the Emergency Rental Assistance Program. Just so you know, this program, the purpose of this program is to provide financial assistance to eligible households, and that form of assistance could be in rental, utilities, and so forth. But it's to provide rental assistance and utility assistance and other assistance for eligible households that have suffered some type of financial hardship and housing instability. The city and the county issued a joint request for proposal a couple months ago and received approximately 5 proposals. And the county and the city selected Innovative Emergency Management Incorporated to administer the program, and they have agreed to administer the program for a fee of 8% of the program assistance. The purpose of selecting the firm was to ensure that we are able to administer this program through a smooth application process and that we are able to obligate the funds timely. We're recommending that the board move this agenda item to the May 17th Board of Commissioners meeting and approve the professional services agreement with Innovative Emergency Management, also known as IEM, for the terms outlined in the agreement. And I'll respond to any questions that you may have.
Are there any questions or discussions? If not, is there a motion?
Motion to move.
I'm second.
All in favor?
Unanimous?
Thank you very much, Madam Manager.
Yes, our next item will also be presented by Ms. Taylor. It's a funding agreement with Kingdom Community Development Corporation.
As you recall, at the February 15th Board of Commissioners meeting, the board approved a funding agreement with Kingdom Community Development Corporation for a multi-phase affordable housing development project. For that particular agreement, we had with Kingdom, it was to use community development funding for site acquisition, clearance, infrastructure, and improvements. Kingdom Community Development is now ready to move on to the next phase, which is the development of 5 single-family homes on those properties. And the funds home investment partnership funds will be used for the construction of 4 of those units, and Kingdom will use their resources to leverage the cost for the remaining units. These single-family homes will be targeting home buyers that are low income in Cumberland County. The properties are located on Elizabeth Street and Lee Street in the Spring Lake area. So Kingdom Community Development Corporation is also a designated community housing development organization, also known as a CHODO. And as required by HUD, we are required to set aside at least a portion of our home investment partnership funds for CHODO-related activities. And aside from that, we also are funding this project because it does meet the goals, one of the goals and objectives that are outlined in our 5-year strategic plan, and that is to expand affordable housing opportunities for potential low-income home buyers. We're asking the board to approve the funding agreement with Kingdom Community Development. We're asking the board to move this item to the May 17th agenda as a consent agenda at the May 17th board meeting, and approve the funding agreement with Kingdom Community Development in an amount not to exceed $500,000.
Are there any questions or comments?
I move that we approve.
Yes, ma'am.
I move that we approve the item.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Unanimous.
Thank you so much, Madam Manager.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, this brings us to item number 5, and we use this section of the agenda to provide updates to the board. I do, in the absence of Commissioner Adams, who chairs the city-county liaison meeting, he asked me to provide this update. That city-county liaison did meet on April 16th. Your members are Chairman Evans, Vice Chairman Adams, and Commissioner Stewart. That it was a very successful meeting. They did discuss the Homeless Day Center, which you heard the report today by the City of Fayetteville. One important note that Commissioner Adams asked me to bring to your attention is that there is a tour being scheduled to go to Raleigh to see the Oak City Care Center, their Homeless Day Center. They are tentatively scheduled to do that on June 22nd, but that invitation is extended to all board members, not just those that are city-county liaison members. So if you're interested, please reach out to the clerk so that she'll can provide you additional information. Also, it was decided on the 16th that the liaison committee should begin to meet monthly to talk about mutual topics, especially to talk about the American Rescue Plan as well as emergency rental assistance. Another meeting is scheduled, I believe, for next Friday, May 21st. At that meeting, the Deputy Health Director, Ashley Curtis, provided a COVID-19 update. And there was discussion that it's our younger generation that are not receiving the vaccines. The city suggested that they meet with the Millennial Council, and I had a conversation last week with Dr. Green, and that health department did meet with the Millennial Council last week about their efforts in helping us to get that word out about the vaccines. Justin Hembry with the Mid-Carolina Council of Governments provided an update about the workforce development transfer. There was discussion about the sidewalk at North Regional Branch. There was also discussion about the drainage issues at Headquarters Library. I'm going to hold that item because Mr. Walker's going to come up behind me and talk about that issue that we believe is resolved from the drainage side from the city of Fayetteville. There was also discussion about a city-county resolution to do a countywide water and sewer study, as well as a joint city-county anti-litter campaign. And so that's really a very quick and brief rundown of the city-county liaison. You have two members here today, Commissioner Evans and Commissioner Stewart, that attended that meeting. If I missed anything, please let me know.
You did excellent. Thank you. Next item.
Yes, sir. The Headquarters Library storm drainage and parking lot repairs update. Mr. Walker is going to discuss our next steps since the city has taken care of the pipe issue, which Mr. Walker will explain.
Good afternoon, once again, Commissioners. As you can see, this is a modeling of Maiden Lane, Burgess Street, and the Headquarters Library. I'll get back to the microphone. Excuse me, my apologies. So as you can see, this is a modeling of Burgess Street, Maiden Lane, Headquarters Library. So essentially, where the storm line is, can everybody see the cursor?
Yes.
Where this is the storm drain line from the manhole. So we did a camera inspection, and at approximately 127.3 feet away from the manhole, we discovered that the pipe had separated. And because of the separation of the pipe, it caused the underminement of the parking lot here, and then it continued to contribute to the erosion of the slope here. In addition, because there's such a turbulent flow because of the natural alignment of the creek, it creates sort of a tornadic movement and creates a slurry here, and that undermines the toe of the slope here. So, long story short, we couldn't plug this pipe, cap this pipe, because as you can see with the modeling, this is the additional pooling and flooding that we would get in this area. So, coordinating with the city's now going to cap this pipe and connect to a 42-inch water line here, routing along the traffic circle down Ray Avenue. And because they're able to do that, we can now go in, excavate this portion of the parking lot, do injection grouting into the pipe to close off the pipe and reduce the void under the parking lot. And then we'll be able to go in, restore the slope with gabion baskets, concrete filled mattress revetments, and riprap, and then stabilize the slope. So we hope to issue an NTP to MKR, who is on the city's on-call list for surveying and grading. The notice to proceed at the end of the month. We expect about 2 months for planning and design, and then going forward, taking the design, bidding the design out, and then accepting bids and going into mobilization for construction toward the end of the calendar year, with the entire project being complete no later than the beginning of April 22.
Thank you. Any comments? Yes, ma'am.
Do you realize the history of this project?
I don't, Commissioner. I've been here 60 days. Just keep that in mind.
You're right, you're watching.
60 days. 60 days.
60 days.
Yes, ma'am, 2 months.
Do you know how long we've been playing with this?
No, ma'am.
Bless your heart, I'm not gonna tell you, I think we got a bargain. We got a bargain.
The irony of the whole thing, Jermaine, is this is not even the path that we were looking at for 2 months. We were trying to repair the pipe, and now we're just gonna divert it. Is the other pipe already existing? The one that's going down
The 42-inch line is already existing.
Yeah.
Right now, while PWC is excavating Maiden Lane, my department, we've been coordinating with the city's engineer department and the floodplain director, floodplain manager, and while the street's open, they've already submitted their finalized plans, they've been accepted, and that's how we're going to tie into the pipe.
Yeah, excellent, good.
Are there any other questions or comments? If not, thank you so much. Madam Manager.
Oh, it's here. It's here. Okay. So I'm going to stand in for Assistant County Manager Angel Wright Lanier. She couldn't be with us today. After the April agenda session, management met to talk about the grants manager position. We heard your concerns and felt like we needed to make a change. And so we sent out a memorandum several weeks ago about consolidating the grants manager function within the county manager's office. And, Danny, help me here. I was trying to swipe. What am I doing wrong? Oh, it's a PDF swiped up. Okay, gotcha. So we made the recommendation that we would bring that function up into the county manager's office. First of all, it will streamline communications. Ms. Wright Lanier has a tremendous amount of grants experience, both from a governmental perspective, private world as well. And so that really works very well with the American Rescue Plan, and that's going to be a tremendous amount of work. There's going to need to be significant communication between management and this position. We are updating the job description and working with Vicki to take out the financial functions. Vicki is supportive of this change, but her will still work very closely with the grants manager. We're also working to update the grants management policies. Now, the work has started. The grants manager has been plugged in with the lobbyist along with Ms. Schutt, Ms. Wright Lanier. They have been working with an outside consultant to assist in departments in writing grants. So that process has started. So as Ms. Wright Lanier said at the April session, we did not have an infrastructure for grant writing, the grants process, and grants management. Vicki and Yvonne have been working with Ms. Wright Lanier as well as Sula to procure some software, and so they're building that infrastructure as we speak. And so that will dovetail well with the American Rescue Plan and other grants that we procure. And so basically I just wanted to, Angel was nice enough to do this PowerPoint to help me along the way. It was provided in advance at your seats earlier today. If you have any questions, I'm glad to try to answer them. Mr. Chairman,
yes.
With your permission, I'd like to go into the final update today.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Management thought it might be helpful, since the board has put a lot of time in establishing priorities and goals and objectives and measurable results, to try to different intervals and give you an update to tell you some of the progress we've made on your goals and priorities along the way. With the Performing Arts Center, we are working with Spectra since things are opening up now. We're trying to identify a date for the consultant to do that restart of the market analysis and the feasibility study that was paused due to COVID. I do want to say a little bit about the homelessness study that we're going through. PIO actually worked with the radio stations and got some advertising on the radios to get citizens to provide feedback and to fill out that study. We actually had 625 responses. According to the consultant, that's twice the number that they normally receive. They're actually thrilled to receive 625 responses from the general public. And so that's a part of that deeper dive that they're taking. And so we feel like we're going to get some good feedback. General government communication has been one of the board's priorities. Today, Sally and Keith presented the website. That's been one of the areas and projects that's taken a significant amount of time, but we're very pleased to present that to you today. We are trying to have departments present at each morning meeting, and so far Veteran Services and Cooperative Extension have done that. But as they make those presentations to you, PIO and Sally's team are actually creating videos for the TV, CCN TV, as well as social media. And so at our Mayor's Coalition last week, county government monopolized that agenda. You should be proud that we had several departments that gave presentations. The Health Department gave 2 presentations. Solid Waste Management was also a part of that agenda, as well as Elaine Smith with Animal Services. And Mr. Chairman, you were there for that coalition meeting, and I thought our departments were very well received by the mayors. There were a lot of good questions from our departments.
Did a fantastic job.
Yes, sir. The county facility asset and inventory, Mr. Walker has already told you that RFQ is out on the street. We're excited about that to get that jump started quickly. The final thing I wanted to mention was a continuing priority from FY 2021, and that was discussion about an E.E. Smith High School. We have made some progress in that area. The vice chairman and I participated in a meeting back in March with the Cumberland County Schools as well as Fort Bragg officials. I'm sorry, that was in April, I apologize. And then on May 5th, we followed up. The vice chairman and county management had a virtual call with the garrison commander, Colonel Scott Pence, and his staff to really talk about several items. Bragg Estates, we talked about the talent pipeline, as well as E.E. Smith High School. And military officials are very excited about the thought of the possibility of having a replacement high school to serve the military children up in that Shaw Heights area, and they're very, very supportive. Commissioner Keefe, you mentioned earlier in the meeting when the lobbyists were on the line about the county needing to build a greater relationship with the military. Just to let the board know, management is in the process of trying to do that. We have a very detailed meeting with them in June. It's actually with General Carrilla. He has asked us to meet with him in person and talk about our initiatives and what they can do for us and what we can do for them. So we're really excited about that opportunity. So I'll pause here and see if you have any questions about the priorities and the progress that's been made. If not, I thought I would share a few thoughts about the recommended budget.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay? So last month, I shared with the board information from a budget request standpoint. And I shared that we received $23 million in new money requests, and that $23 million exceeded our current year budget. As of today, unfortunately, we have not finalized the recommended budget. Much like last year, it remains a very fluid process with some level of uncertainty. So we're going to be working throughout this weekend to try to get that finalized and get our documents together. But I can share a few key points with you today. The budget will be balanced without a tax increase, which is a good thing. Another point of good news is that our three major revenue sources in the general fund, ad valorem, motor vehicle, and sales taxes, are rebounding from our projected pandemic losses, which really speaks to the resiliency of our community and our local economy. However, I do want to caution you, there's still uncertainty as we go forward as some of the stimulus funding maybe fades away, what impact that'll have on our economy. So in keeping with the board's goal of maintaining long-term financial sustainability, we're developing the budget in a conservative and prudent manner, and that's been really our philosophy and the board's philosophy over the last several years. On the expenditure side, the recommended budget will support the board's goals and priorities as well as ongoing initiatives. However, at this time, I don't plan to budget any of the American Rescue Plan funding in the recommended budget. We're reviewing the guidelines from the U.S. Treasury and the board's American Rescue Plan work group. As they conduct their work, we would envision coming back and asking the board to approve budget revisions as necessary. I will pause and say that the grants manager has filed the appropriate paperwork. It has come through that U.S. Treasury has accepted our paperwork to start sending that money. We have not received it yet, unless you know, Vicki, we have. But we're well poised, and they've approved our paperwork to receive the funding. And so the recommended budget will be presented on Thursday, May 27th at 7 p.m. And that's the update for both your priorities and the recommended budget. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Are there any questions or comments for Madam Manager? If not, anything else?
We have the monthly reports that were sent out in advance. We're happy to answer any questions that you may have. If not, that's all that we have today.
Are there any questions or comments about monthly reports? If not, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Second. All in favor? Thank you all so much.